Hey man, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. So, Wave 3 is ongoing. US airstrikes
Sure.
reported against Zahedan, southern Iran. That's the first I hear about Zahedan.
Yep.
Iraqi outlet Sabrine reports that American and Israeli fighter jets are airborne above Iraq.
I mean, I would just with respect, it's very hard, especially at this time of the day, to determine if they're Israelis, right? I mean, it could be. I'm not denying it, but at this hour, eyewitness testimony, it could be people misidentifying either U.S. or even coalition fighter
Happens all
jets
the
that are
time, yeah,
there.
over
So,
Iraq.
what it would be interesting, Mario, to see is we over the weekend we had the Israeli significant strikes that happened. That one was clearly just Israel. This one is the United States. The question I would have is, did the U.S. also incorporate Israel into this operation, or did the U.S. say, hey, we want to take this unilaterally because we want to at least manage the escalation ladder and not have an appearance for the Iranians that the war has resumed and the ceasefire has officially collapsed. So that's kind of what I would say and analyze. It would be interesting if Israel was involved in this.
If Israel was involved, that would be, we could say the ceasefire's collapse. That would be very significant.
I think it would be significant. Does that necessarily mean the ceasefire's collapsed? I mean, we're at a situation, Mario, though, I think we have to be honest. Like, this is a ceasefire name only, right? Let's be frank, right? So, and so now the question, though, isn't necessarily the ceasefire. Does the situation go to a full-scale conflict has completely resumed and we're back to where we were in, March and April, February, March and April? That's the key question that I would have.
Yeah. There was also a report, unconfirmed. I'm not sure if you've seen anything about an explosion in Haifa. Have you seen that?
No, I've not seen that. No.
Maybe it called a sonic boom or something. So we just got that report earlier. Initial reports of explosions in Ahvaz, Khuzestan province in southern Iran. Khuzestan is home to approximately 80% of Iran's oil reserves. Really?
Correct. So the Khuzestan, so that's an interesting one that Khuzestan was targeted. So Khuzestan, that's why when people were focusing a lot on this issue of oil, et cetera, and we're talking about Karg Island, to me, it would have made more sense Khuzestan because it's right there at the border with Iraq. Predominantly one of the Arab minority in Iran lives there. It is the vast majority of the Iranian oil actually comes from there. I mean, Karg Island is famous for its export, but the Iranians maybe can find ways to kind of bypass that and get in other areas, et cetera. But where the vast majority of the oil is actually produced and for Iran is there. And so that's always been an extra aspect. But there are military installations there. Avas is a key town in Khuzestan. We had seen during the war strikes in Avas being reported there, but not necessarily on the oil facilities. And what it would be interesting as this goes on, the question that I would have is, we do know that the Israelis, when they conducted strikes, they targeted petrochemical facilities in addition to air defense. They targeted air defense assets and a petrochemical facility. Very interesting. Right now, at least from what's being leaked to the U.S. side, it looks like it's just purely military targets. The question is, though, as these rounds of strikes continue, does that maintain? I do believe the U.S. has less of interest to target Iranian economic interest than Israel, but only time will tell.
There's videos of reports of two drones, MQ-9s, being shot down. One there's a video of, another one there's no video of it. But we've seen these drones shut down multiple times throughout the war. I want to go through the target list by the U.S. so far. So in wave number 2, they struck Sirik, Jask. So Malcolm Ness was telling me Jask is home to a lot of the underground tunnels where the fast attack boats are located that the Iranians are using to intercept vessels through the Strait of Hormuz.
Jask is it's a very key area for the Iranians to maintain the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. It's a key military objective for the Iranians.
What about Sirik?
Sirik is the same way that it clearly were the U.S. And I think if you look at the target package that we've seen, at least right now, that we kind of know. And again, we have to be cognizant that some of the reports from inside of Iran, these reports of explosions, could be mistaken for other things, right? So that a very important caveat. But it does look like that the majority of the strikes that the U.S. has concentrated is mostly centered around the area in the immediate area of the Straits of Hormuz. And what it looks like is that the Iranians are utilizing, they're targeting air defense assets, coastal, radars, coastal radar systems, and others to maintain that. One of the things that I think, I kind of mentioned this because, I was co-hosting your space earlier. I saw, I think it was Adam Kinzinger, the former Republican congressman. He said, well, wait, why does Iran still have air defense assets, radars, and missiles, right? I mean, there's multiple ways we can analyze this. One, Iran has a reserves. They have storage and they have reserves, right? So after the conflict ended and the ceasefire was put in place, the Iranians had the ability to take out a lot of these equipment out of storage and reserves. And number two, specifically talking about like these air defense assets, if they're not during the war, if they just turn off their radars and they're not emitting, you can't necessarily find them, right? The way you find these systems is that specifically they start emitting in the radar, you get the electronic signature, you have other ways to collect, but that's the key indicators. If they just turn it off or they hide it or these were systems put in storage, you're not going to be able to do it. So there could also be an argument that maybe the United States was tracking how all the reports that we got that the Iranians were pulling things out of these underground facilities that only had the entrance, the entrance destroyed. Maybe they had reserve storage or equipments that they turned off during the war to maintain combat power. Now they've activated it. They started to use it in the United States, Israel first. And now the United States is saying this is a prime opportunity to just continue to degrade the Iranian military infrastructure, specifically their air defense asset. Because if you talk to anybody who served in the Air Force, they will always tell you their number one target 9 times out of 10 is going to be enemy air defense assets. So if these were systems that the Iranians have kept that were in reserve, in storage, or were like shut behind the underground facilities that they managed to get back into service, Israel, now the United States saying, hey, this is prime and perfect opportunity for us to start knocking these systems out.
There's a footage, KK, if you can show that footage, it seems like a ballistic missile was fired onto Erbil. I don't know if it's fired at a US base. There's a video of it that just came out now. It's being sent around. It's from Loristan province, western Iran, showing a glowing object traveling through the sky, possibly a missile going through Iranian Kurdish opposition groups in northern Iraq. This is can you zoom in on the missile? Can you play it again? This is it there.
Yeah.
Looks like a ballistic missile, doesn't it?
Is it heading towards Iran?
It's heading towards Iraq, Kurdistan.
Oh, okay. So from Iran heading towards it could be. Yeah, definitely could be one of the areas of the retaliation. I think, look, one of the things that we've seen the Iranians do, even after the Israel-Iran kind of tit for tat ended, where the Iranians started to conduct response still was against Iraqi Kurdistan, that even to the point where there were reports that U.S. patriots were intercepting. So this could be kind of that same aspect. Hey, we got struck, start targeting these areas. It's very interesting that a lot of the strikes that the Iranians have been doing is against the Kurds in Iraqi Kurdistan. I think that indicates from their threat perception level, they are very concerned about the Kurdish threat. They're extremely concerned about the Kurdish ability to maybe launch a ground operation. Still, even when Trump kind of shot that down, the Israelis haven't pursued it. I think that still is a main internal security threat that the Iranians have and why they might conduct strikes. It would be interesting to see if in the Iranian retaliation, do they target Israel? Do they target the GCC? Do they target everything? And that's where I think we've got to just let time and determine where we're at.
I don't think they target Israel because Israel was not part of these attacks. And I think Iran always responds in a logical way. If the US attacks them, they'll strike the US or the Gulf. If Israel attacks them, they'll strike Israel. They might respond horizontally and drag other countries when it strategically makes sense. I just don't think Israel strategically makes sense here. I want to go back to the target list. So we talked about Sirik, Jask, Bandar Abbas, and Keshem. Why would these be targeted?
It's the same because of the Straits of Hormuz, obviously, right? I mean, we do know that it's very interesting the amount of strikes that the United States has done against Keshem and Jersk and that specific area. We've seen footage from U.S. CENTCOM showing them target multiple Iranian military facilities' radars. Clearly, the Iranians, as their attempt to maintain the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, are heavily dependent on Keshem Island for that. And I think that's kind of the main aspect that we're running into. And I think the United States thought process is, look, the Apache helicopter that was shot down was clearly allowing vessels, maritime vessels, to bypass the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. I think a lot of the vessels that are going through the Straits of Hormuz is not being publicly reported, and I think it's higher than what we expected. We got a lot of the reports, and clearly the U.S. military is playing probably a more active role, where these Apache helicopters are one of the main conduits for these vessels to go through.
There's also just targeting. This is in Jam near Bushir, in Bushir province, in Jam. This is just an image.
I mean, a lot of these are concentrated in southern Iran, right? Which was interesting because if you look at the Israeli strikes, they were more in Tehran, kind of spread out to the center. And again, these is from the threat perception, right?
There's explosions, but there's explosions in eastern Iran as well, in Zahedan, Sistan, and Balochistan province. Literally just came in now, possibly targeting the Zahedan airbase. So that's just been reported now a few seconds ago.
I'm wondering if that
everything else has been southern.
Yeah. I said, southern, right? So, and I think it's that southern coast, right? Because again, it's the threat perception from these. So, if you look at the Israelis and where they conducted the strikes, the vast majority that was concentrated in the northern section of Iran, which kind of mirrors Epic Fury and Rising Lion in the war that happened. The Israelis have concentrated there. The United States concentrated more in the south, and that's generally where the Iranian threats. And so, if the Iranians want to conduct a strike against Israel, you will generally see that from that western province, central, northwestern area of Iran. The threats for the United States and their military positions in the Gulf of Oman and the Straits of Hormuz and the GCC countries are going to come more from the south, right, from the southern coastline of Iran and there. It's interesting this Balochistan is there. I mean, it does show that, one of the questions that we were having in the space was, how does this round of strikes that the United States did compares to Israel strikes over the weekend? Because again, the Israeli strikes over the weekend were pretty expansive. The question now becomes, how expansive are these strikes that the United States are doing in southern Iran? I think the drone that they leveraged to shoot down the Apache helicopter was a pretty significant event. And one of the things that I can tell you from my experience when I kind of focus on the Middle East specifically in my previous career, is like one of the things that has been very consistent within the Trump administration and President Trump himself was this notion of a U.S. casualty would require a significant U.S. military response. And I think the fact that the Apache helicopters pilots were rescued made sure that, at least from the U.S. perspective, the ceasefire is still in place. Yes, they're doing retaliatory strikes, but we saw the report from CNN indicating we can, basically a dual track, right? These are two separate things. We can continue the negotiations. Obviously, the question then goes back to
you can't attack. This is it. This is what I've been saying. I've been saying that this number one, an Iranian spokesperson did take responsibility for the attack. He was praising the attacker, and they were blaming the American operations in the Strait of Hormuz. Apache, a lot of statements implying that the Iran took responsibility for the attack. Mm-hmm. And in one statement, they've even praised the attacker. They said they're going to kiss your hand or something. So I was reading that in previous interviews. And I've been always saying, like, this, expect Trump to show force. He's been showing weakness, unlike the Israelis, who responded very aggressively towards Iran when Iran attacked them. The Americans have been more de-escalatory because Trump wants a deal, and all the responses, all the retaliation before just showed Trump did not really want to escalate. This time, I understand he needed to show a stronger response. 3 waves, that's significant. It's surprising. It is very significant.
You can make the argument: is it really 3? I mean, 3 waves in the construct of like the strike packages that are going on, but it hasn't really stopped. I mean, if you look at time on target, and we've been getting reports of explosions in Iran, it's been fairly consistent.
No, other than the first one, they said the attack is over, and then we got the second one an hour later or so, an hour or 2 later.
And so that's kind of the thing that I'm looking at. It is an expansive, I guess.
It's ongoing. It reports on Qasem Island. It's ongoing, Steph.
Qasem Island is the center of this. Like, if you're analyzing this from a military perspective, if you wanted to forcefully open the Straits of Hormuz in a way, your primary target, your number one, your main objective would be Qasem Island. That's your number one objective, right? Don't even seize Karg Island. Like if you want to seize an island, you seize Qasem Island. If you want to militarily reopen, that is where the Iranians, at least in a lot of aspects, have been using this just as well. But I think what the United States and these strike packages are trying to send a message. I mean, I think there's maybe 2 ways they're trying to do this. One of the aspects is we degrade the military capabilities that Iran has been enabling them to do some sort of operations in the Straits of Hormuz. So the U.S. wants to continue to degrade that because the Israeli strikes were much more focused again in Tehran and the central area, but again targeting air defense assets. And the messaging was we're going to continue to be able to operate freely over Iranian airspace. And we do know Israel and U.S. drones have been flying over Iran still to this day, even with the ceasefire in place. What I think. The next question I have, though, is how does the Iranian respond to this? And then more importantly, though, does this, if there's a breakdown in the negotiations or if there's another impediment and Trump needs to maybe escalate to de-escalate, by degrading these capabilities,
so just waiting for KK, if you could check Steph's connection. So we're getting reports so far the targets that are struck in wave 3. There's renewed explosions as we speak in Qasem Island. There are reports in eastern Iran earlier, a couple of minutes ago, as I was saying, in Zahedan, Sistan, and Balochistan province, eastern Iran. And there's speculation it's targeting the Zahedan air base. The initial explosions in wave 3, there was a bit of a pause between wave 2 and wave 3, but I think it's all one long wave. Initial reports in Ahvaz, Khuzestan province, both of them in southern Iran. And Khuzestan, as Stefano was saying, is home to about 80% of Iran's oil reserves. So that's a very significant position. We just don't know what they were striking Khuzestan. There could be striking air defense batteries or radars in Khuzestan as well. If it's home to 80% of the oil reserves, people are jumping to the conclusion that they're striking the energy infrastructure. That's not the case.
There's a lot of military targets in Khuzestan. It's just very interesting that if they decided to target Khuzestan. The only thing I can think of, there were a couple of strikes before that maritime strikes that happened off the coast of Kuwait and Iraq. That logically you would think that that's where it came from Khuzestan specifically. And maybe the question is the United States targeting those specific areas to prevent them from holding, let's say, Kuwait hostage in those maritime vessels? But again, it's kind of right now what we're seeing is all along the coast. Much more centered around Qasem Island, Bandar Abbas, kind of the immediate area of the Straits of Hormuz, but across the coast in very much ways of strike. So it's a pretty expansive strike, Mario. I think that's a very clear statement in and of itself.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Are these, one of my guests asked earlier, Brandon Weichert, do you think these are shaping operations for something much bigger?
I mean, before you lost me, I think that's actually one of the things I was speculating, which is, if there's a problem with negotiations, right before I dropped, I literally opened up the opportunities. Like, if negotiations fails, I mean, these do look like shaping operations, for example, for a Project Freedom 2.0, right? So that's
not shaping operation for a full-blown return to the war, but more likely something like Operation Freedom.
I mean, if you want to go back full war, these strikes would support that type. It would, yeah. I mean, if you wanted to go back to war, because again, I think the issue is when the ceasefire was restated, one of the things the Iranians really wanted to prioritize was, okay, we got to get some of our military equipment back up and running. We got to get our air defense. We got to get our ballistic missiles. We got to get our drones, etc. We got to get it back. This is the time to reconstitute our force. And clearly the United States and Israel were looking into this, right? They were tracking the Iranians doing this. Because I think when the war happened, some of the assets, they said, look, we're not going to be able to stop the U.S. We're not going to be able to stop Israel. Now is the time to get some of these assets to kind of try to restart, reattempt deterrence. And the U.S. and Israel taking advantage of it to say, okay, let's continue to knock out these capabilities while we can. I mean, these are shaping operations. And at the end of the day, if the U.S. wanted to go full-blown war, they can do it. I said Project Freedom because of the concentration of the strikes happen along the south. And that's that's why it's going on. But again, it does read as a retaliation, just to say, hey, we're retaliating for your strike and downing of our Apache helicopter. I would say again, if Iran killed those pilots, the conversation we'd be having right now is the resumption of the war, not just a tit for tat. Mario, I lost your audio.
Oh, sorry. In response to the aggression of the terrorist U.S. Army in southern parts of the country, that's the IRGC, under the false pretext of a crash of its helicopter, some U.S. bases in the region were powerfully attacked by the heroic army of. The criminal activity of the U.S. Army should know that if it repeats aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran, more severe widespread attacks will be carried out against the designated target banks in the region.
So are they saying they already did the retaliation, or the retaliation?
Yeah, this is a bizarre statement. They're saying Iran's armed forces that they have targeted already several U.S. bases in the region, but I haven't seen any reports of Iranian attacks. And the military command said if the U.S. repeats its aggression again against Iran, more severe and widespread strikes will be carried out against a predetermined target bank in the region. Target banks in the region. That's surprising.
I just have to say, Mario, if you look at the Israeli strikes over the weekend and the Iranian response to it, it did not give the impression that the Iranians have the military capability to go back and resume this full stop, right? I mean, from a military component, the Iranian response against Israel showed a level of weakness, and it showed that the Israelis were, I mean, if anything, they wanted to continue. Right? It took President Trump to say, no, we don't want to go full back to full-blown war. Because the Israelis had effects. The fact that the United States is doing 3 waves of strikes right now, targeting vast areas of southern Iran, the fact that they're saying the strikes already happened when we haven't really heard anything significant yet of anywhere. We haven't seen airspace closure. I mean, there were some reports that maybe some Middle Eastern countries might have closed their airspace. We haven't heard sirens. We haven't heard evacuation notice. We haven't seen air defense activities. That's weird. I'm wondering if this is either a mistranslation or an error in the post that really, I would suspect the IRGC is about to respond. But I wouldn't expect the response to be that severe if we look over the weekend how they handled Israel. Now, where Iran has much more benefit of the doubt compared to Israel is because a lot of these targets are closer to Iran, they have more arsenal available to them for them to launch these operations.
The IRGC said that the U.S. attacked several locations in Jask, Sirik, and Kashem early on today. A telecommunications tower in Sirik was damaged, and 2 water reservoirs in the Bamami district were destroyed. I'm assuming this is wrong targeting. Otherwise, it'd be freaking wild. Why the hell would the U.S. target water reservoirs? Because then the desalination plants would be targets. But we had a reporter by IRIB report it. I thought maybe the reporter is mistaken because it just makes no sense. Or Malcolm told me it could be just wrong targeting. They would have thought they're oil tanks or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that the IRGC is saying it, then this is...
I'm just surprised at the IRGC. Where was that? Just some news agency, Fars, Mer? Which news agency said this?
This is Iran's Qatam al-Anbiya central headquarters. Direct statement. Some U.S. bases in the region were powerfully... this is the statement I read earlier. Sorry. This one. In response to the IRGC Navy attacked the U.S. 5th Fleet in Bahrain with drones at 2:30 local time. So that was what, an hour and... So they've attacked only with drones.
I'm going to go to MOA Bahrain. The Ministry... I'm going to try to see... I mean, the Ministry of Interior in Bahrain didn't release any statements of any sirens. Unlike the last time when the Iranians responded... We got alerts from the Ministry of Interior in Bahrain. I just checked their page, and there's nothing, no statement whatsoever as of right now that they put anything of any warnings or nothing.
Yeah,
it just seems very. It just seems very weird. That I don't know if that was a statement that was released
that
early.
Is so weird.
Or
it's just coming in now. Yeah, maybe. Okay, yes, fair point. But this is, I don't know, this is odd. I would expect something a lot more significant. Like, this is not even a question. Otherwise, it would be very bizarre. It would be an incredible sign of weakness if Iran does not respond very heavily to this attack. Is that a fair statement?
It's just this attack. I think the U.S. right now is very significant. It's very surprising. We did get videos of some ballistic missile launches that looked like that were out of Iran. We haven't really seen any reports of them impacting everywhere. We didn't see red sirens in Israel. We haven't seen any reports out of any other territories that indicate that maybe incoming is going on.
They haven't retaliated yet. I'm pretty.
We haven't seen any reports that they have. No, I would agree. I mean, some of the footage that came out,
maybe a few drones, to Bahrain, no alerts. But I don't know whether this statement is trying to indicate to the Americans just to stop the attack. Hold on, I'm getting some more information on this. And walked back by who? So I'm getting more information on the claim of the attack, but everyone's confused about it. It's confirmed, but it's it's confirmed, but it's someone's telling me I heard that earlier, but then it was walked back. I'm trying to get more clarity on it. But there is another source saying, another Iranian source saying, the Iranian response to the American aggression will be the most severe since the ceasefire.
Yeah. I mean, Al Jazeera is reporting it. Al Jazeera says we targeted some U.S. bases in the region in response to the recent attacks on Iranian cities. And then you talked about that IRGC, specifically IRIB News. Interesting that they identified as the IRGC Navy conducted the drone strikes against the Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, which for the most part has been abandoned. Really? Yeah, I'm seeing it here. They're saying it's the IRGC Navy fighters launched a drone attack on the Bahraini 5th Naval Fleet at 2:30 a.m., which is the one they said. But it's just a very interesting dynamic because we haven't received any reporting in any way, shape, or form. Hold on. I think people are just throwing because I'm seeing.
What do you think Iran would do in retaliation? Like when they properly retaliate, do you think it will only be Kuwait and Bahrain, or could you see the rest of the Gulf?
I mean, it's hard to say, but it's much more than this. I mean, we haven't received any alerts from any of the host nations. We haven't received an alert from Kuwait. We haven't received an alert from Bahrain. We haven't received an alert in UAE. We haven't received an alert from Saudi Arabia.
There's been no retaliation. But I'm saying when they retaliate, because another source in Iran saying it's going to be the biggest retaliation since the ceasefire. It just came in now. So when they do retaliate, how significant do you think it will be?
It has to be more significant than what they did against Israel, which, to be honest, was not that significant. I mean, they launched what?
No, the first one, but the second one was not significant at all. But
what was it? 20 ballistic missiles, right? They launched 20 ballistic missiles.
I think it was 15.
Yeah. I mean, against Israel.
The second one was even smaller.
Like, I think it was 5. The second one, the first one was 15. I think it was 20. That's not a large ballistic missile strike against Israel. Now, granted, the problem the Iranians have is the distance. So they only have medium-range ballistic missiles. Obviously, in the rest, they have a lot more capabilities because it's shorter range. I mean, I would suspect, look, the fact that these were 3 rounds that they launched about, the U.S. launch, I mean, I think the Iranians are going to try to achieve somewhat, I mean, maybe not parity, but you're probably going to see, they're probably if they're going to say it's much more significant, I would look at a couple of dozen, at least, I mean, 30 to 50 ballistic missiles, I would assume.
Wow.
And that's just me right now with no absolute.
Against which countries? Yeah, I understand. But against which countries do you think they'll strike?
Well, the fact that they've identified Bahrain indicates to me that, okay, that's probably the next one they're going to target, right? Because if you hit the naval sites, we're going to hit the naval sites. They're probably going to also launch targets because and then the other is probably some air bases. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the air bases in the UAE they target. I wouldn't be surprised if they target Bahrain, Kuwait. The UAE is interesting because we do know that UAE will punch back. They've been much more active in the military campaign. So I'm wondering if from the Iranian perspective, it's like, well, let's target at the areas where we know we don't. I think there was an interesting report I did see. Again, we have no way of confirming this. The Iranians accused one of the missiles was launched from Bahrain. Right, so probably if there's a U.S. attack comes in and they launch it from there, take it with a huge grain of salt. But like they're claiming that the missile was launched from Bahrain. It would be interesting if that's the case because then they can concentrate their fire there. Could be Kuwait, but I think if they're going to say it's more significant, they have to make it more than just what they did against Israel. 30 to 50 ballistic missiles and drones total, if not more, to really do that, if the way they're framing it. Because what they did against Israel was not effective during the weekend. It really wasn't. And Israel was very...
Wall Street Journal, Trump said he initially viewed the incident involving a U.S. helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz as not a big deal, but later approved military action after receiving updated briefings from Defense Secretary Hegseth and Dan Kane, Joint Chiefs Chairman. U.S. officials said the Iranian Shahed drone strike on the helicopter warranted a response regardless of whether it was intentional. That's a bizarre thing to say.
Because if it's a Shahed 136, so the Shahed 136,
the loitering munition.
Right, so they're going to put the coordinates going to launch, and so the question then is, was this like, because we've seen Apache helicopters be, the UAE actually have used Apache helicopters to shoot down drones, right? We see the Ukrainians use it. So was this a situation? That's when they're saying it was intentional. Was this as a drone that was launched against something, and then it just hit the Apache helicopter? Now, clearly that drone was targeting something. The Shahed 136 is not an ISR platform, right? It's a one-way. Now we're assuming it's the Shahed 136. There's other systems. For example, there's a Shahed 129, which, for example,
so Malcolm told me based on the report. Hold on, let me get you the information of which one? Shahed 358, a loitering munition.
Oh, okay. So no. So the 358. Okay, so the 358. That's an anti-air system. The 358 is an anti-air. So actually, look, I'll get kudo where kudo is. The 358 is a very lethal product. It's a very lethal system that the Iranians developed, right? They call it a drone. I mean, yeah, it's a drone kind of missile. It's an anti-air, very effective. We've seen that used by Iran, by their proxies very effectively, the Houthis, et cetera, right? The 358 is a very capable system. The fact that it was a 358 that hit the Apache, that's not, to me, that's in no universe is that accidental. Like that to me is like they specifically targeted the Apache helicopter with the 358. Now, the fact that the Apache helicopter's pilot survived is very interesting, right? That maybe shows some limitations of the 358s from a lethality perspective. Obviously, they can bring it down, but not kill the pilots. But the 358, that's not an accident. I don't see how that could be an accident in any way, shape, or form.
Isn't the 358 a loitering munition where it just sits there waiting for?
But it's an anti-air. But it's anti-air.
Oh, okay, but it's designed for helicopters, so that would be intentional.
Correct.
But if you look at the statements on the Iranian side,
358 is 100% anti-air capability, and that's how they use it.
Interesting. Interesting. So I'm just trying to get more information on the reports of attacks on the Gulf, and so far there's been no reports of any alerts in the Gulf.
So this is the just show it here quickly so you guys can see it. But that's the 358, right?
Oh wow!
And it's a surface to air missile. It's 100% a surface to air. People call it a drone.
CENTCOM said they've completed. It's confirmed. No. CENTCOM says they've completed strikes. CENTCOM forces completed self-defense strikes against Iran in response to yesterday's downing of the helicopter. CENTCOM forces struck Iranian air defense, ground control stations, and surveillance radar sites near the Strait of Hormuz with precise munitions from U.S. Air Force and Navy fighter jets. The operation was a proportional response to recent attacks on U.S. forces and international commercial shipping transiting regional waters. U.S. forces remain vigilant and postured to defend against any unjustified Iranian aggression. Iran's IRGC confirms a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone was downed over Jam, southern Iran, earlier tonight. So there's two updates here. The attack.
I mean, it's really interesting to see. The Iranians have claimed a lot of times they shot down drones. Not true. So we'll see.
There was a video of this one. There was a video of this one as well. Again, I'm not saying it's confirmed. There is a video. There were claims that was down, two claims by various sources. One there was a video of, but this one they've confirmed it. But they've downed a lot of MQ-9s. Even the Americans.
Right. The MQ-9. It's very interesting. One of the Air Force generals, I've said this before, one of your shows, they said that they used the MQ-9 really aggressively, and it was the most effective platform. And I think the reasoning for it, obviously because it's a drone, they don't, there's not a concern about the person. And I think even when they were shot down, it enabled the U.S. then to find these assets to then strike the air defense assets. But that's very interesting. We'll see. I'm very interested to see the actual real. I would hope we get more reporting on the actual total scope of the strikes. But the fact that CENTCOM released a statement, that means the strike campaign lasted approximately about 3 hours. So that's a pretty long strike campaign, which kind of makes sense with the whole 3 waves, right? So it does show it was a pretty expansive strike, and we'll see if they start releasing video of the strikes.
I want to go back to the explanation, the question. whether this is preparation for something bigger. So I've been saying for a while, I think the war is over. I said it again now on X while the attack is happening. I always like to do that because it triggers everyone. Everyone likes to mock me whenever I do that. All the people that want the war to continue, they want the action to continue, or they don't believe it ended, or they don't trust that Trump is de-escalating. And I don't blame them. I'm not certain with my belief. But whenever I say the war is over, I do have my doubts though, Steph. And I do worry that what Brendan Weikert said earlier, and Brendan doesn't believe the war is over. He thinks this will escalate. He's worried about this escalating into eventually World War III if we continue on this path. So he's in a very different mindset to where I am. But the reason I think this is over, the reason I'm worried, I'll explain why I think it's over later. I've explained it many times before. The reason I'm worried is he does ask an interesting question. They did strike all these radars on the coastline. They did strike the air defense systems on the coastline. So it does look like the preparation for something bigger. Now, his question was maybe they're preparing for something like a ground operation on Kashmir Island or something very significant from an escalatory perspective. However, I do like what you said, that this could be preparation for Project Freedom 2.0. The reason is the negotiations could be going badly, so therefore the US has to have a military option on the table to open the Strait of Hormuz. And I go back to something economists told me earlier. I was speaking to economists in the morning to try to understand why the oil price is so low. When it's low as $85, now it's about $87, $88, but still below $90. So I was trying to understand it from them, and they referred to a comment made by the Secretary of the Energy Secretary earlier today, where he said, Chris Wright said, traffic in the Strait of Hormuz is rising, quote, very meaningfully. And what analysts and traders speculated is that he means that ships were allowed through the American blockade intentionally, turning off their transponders and allowing them through, either Iranian ships or ships being able to sneak through the Iranian blockade, one or the other, but a lot more ships than what's being reported on radars are going through the Strait of Hormuz. So that being one of the reasons why there's enough supply out there. And they all believe, traders believe that Trump does want an off-ramp. They agree with my position that he does want to walk away out of this, and he will walk away, and even the Israelis won't be able to drag him back into it. This is their belief. So if we take that into consideration, and we take the fact that maybe the negotiations are not going well because the Iranians are getting more and more demanding because they feel very, as I've said, emboldened. They feel they want this, and they feel they can get a lot more out of the Americans. If we put these two together, then maybe your explanation that this could be a clearing operation, whatever Brandon called it, could be accurate. And your explanation, where it's Project Freedom 2.0, to me makes the most sense.
This was asked to me as if, like, how you framed it, right? I just want to make it clear. The question was, if this was preparatory for something else, a shaping operation for something else, what could it be? And it's like, well, if we're going to analyze it from that perspective, yes. I do believe what U.S. CENTCOM said, that it was more just like, you attacked our pilot, we did this, we're done, moving on, right? So could it be for something? Could be, absolutely. These are the types of things that they would do. And, both things can be true at once, right? It degrades the military capability in case a decision is made to, let's say, do Project Freedom 2.0. What's very interesting, I think we did get, from the UAE, for example, it does look like some of the oil that's being passed through does look like it's reaching pre-war levels. I think that's why the Apache helicopter was shot down from the Iranians. Because they're able to bypass the Iranian, because U.S. CENTCOM conducted an airstrike against a vessel, a Palau flag vessel associated with the Iranian government that was trying to run away the blockade. They conducted an airstrike against that. And I think what's going on is that the U.S. and CENTCOM have found a way, because I think it was very interesting where the Wall Street Journal, remember, and then U.S. CENTCOM said, this is false. We did not restart anything. And then we got other reporting. I think it was The Guardian. We got the New York Times. We're getting orders. Like, no. U.S. CENTCOM is helping these vessels bypass the Iranian blockade. They are. And I think, and one of the areas that was specifically identified, which I said in one of your episodes, was the Gulf of Oman, in Oman proper, where these Apache helicopters going out, UAE, et cetera, right? So clearly there's a lot of activities that are enabling these vessels to go through just behind the scenes. That is not being public. It's hard to publicly track. And look, turning off AIS systems is a known tactic that vessels do to avoid issues. I mean, when I was a cadet and I was sailing in merchant ships, I sailed in 2010 and 2011 at the height of Somali piracy. That we turned off our AIS to bypass, to make sure the pirates couldn't track us. because that was one of the ways they would track you is, through the AIS. We knew this. So you would turn it off. And then back then we had naval escorts that would get you through. I think what they're doing is they're doing these AIS systems or taking the southern route through the Gulf of Oman. The Apache helicopters are working. It's I think there's more things that are happening in the background. There's some speculation that there are more clashes going on in the Straits of Hormuz that actually gets reported, right? There's some circumstantial evidence that's publicly available that indicates that, at least from like Iranian speedboats, for example, yes, some of them have been publicly discussed, but there's been other instances that looks like, wait, is there something else kind of going on there, right? That indicates that maybe more things. Obviously, Iran has launched drones against these maritime vessels and U.S. CENTCOM has shot them down. So again, reinforcing this idea that more things are going on. And I think the issue is vessels are going through, that they're able to bypass the Iranian closure of the Straits of Hormuz. That's why I think they launched the 358 against an Apache helicopter. I wouldn't be surprised if the 358 was maybe launched from even one of these, it would be interesting. We don't know where it happened. I'm not necessarily familiar if the Iranian have any vessels capable, even if smaller vessels, of carrying the 358 and launching it. Maybe they do, and that's why they target it, to send a message to the U.S. is like, hey, we're going to start targeting your forces because you're bypassing our blockade. And the U.S. as a response to that said, we're going to do this wide, expansive strike on you, which follows the strikes that the Israelis did recently, and that the Iranian response to that wasn't that significant, even though it was tied more to Hezbollah. So I think from the U.S. perspective, I think the bypassing the closure was working, and the Iranians felt like they needed to respond. And that probably goes to the Economist perspective. That's why they targeted the Apache helicopters. And now we're seeing this American response saying we're not going to allow this to happen again.
I think it's a pretty fair explanation. I think it would have been a lone soldier attacking that Apache helicopter, maybe not getting the authorization. I don't know if I said this earlier in this interview, but not getting the authorization of the commanders or the leaders. It just seems like I just wouldn't expect the Iranian leaders to authorize the downing of a helicopter. Now, some people are even speculating this was either a false flag, not false flag, but a malfunction of the helicopter, and they blamed it on the Iranians, or the Iranians did down it, intentionally or unintentionally, but it didn't warrant this level of attack. Now, I thought the Iranians did down it. I thought some sort of forceful response wouldn't be too surprising because Trump has been seen as too weak throughout the last few weeks. But seeing that extent of an attack, that scale of an attack by the Americans, makes me think about that theory again, that what if it was a malfunction? What if it was accidentally shot down and not intentional? Could it be?
Yeah, I guess
like the theory is that a lot of people are saying that the Americans are waiting for an excuse to be able to cause that much damage to the Iranians or even sabotage the peace negotiations.
I mean, look, could it be? I mean, look, it's a 358, right? There's like, I don't think the helicopter just crashed.
Allegedly.
Well, okay, allegedly a 358, but the 358 is designed specifically for this, right? So now, if the argument is, was it a military unit within Iran operating without the approval at the highest level? But the problem is, it takes a long time to get to the supreme leader. Even like the last reporting that we were getting is that even some Iranian officials were having a hard time reaching the supreme leader after the strikes that Israel happened, because they, obviously instituted measures to protect the supreme leader because they didn't want the Israelis to assassinate him. Could it be true? Again, I would just be a little bit cautious on the amount of reports that we got in Iran of explosions to see how expansive it is. I think we need a little bit, there needs to be more, because a lot of times people mix events up and say one thing and it's another. I'm a little bit skeptical. Could Balochistan have been targeted? Sure. Obviously, there's a possibility.
We don't know what was targeted, because a lot of reports of explosions. As you know, a lot of these could be air defenses.
But it's interesting. The U.S. CENTCOM statement was, as you said, right? Like they struck Iranian air defense, ground control stations, and surveillance radar sites. So the ground control stations, I think that's interesting, because those are generally associated with the Iranian, like their ballistic missiles and the drones and their ability to kind of control those assets, right? And so those are the ways that they could do that. And surveillance radar sites in the Straits of Hormuz. Again, I guess the definition is what's near the Straits of Hormuz. Now, we do know there was 3 waves of strikes. right? But the fact that they said it was near the Straits of Hormuz, I don't necessarily think, for example, Kazakhstan would fall into that, right? Where you were talking about. Could have been, sure. I mean, technically, but I think we just need more time. Obviously, there was 3 waves. I think both you and I, regardless, do agree that this was much more extensive than we think. It does look like it rivals what the Israelis did over the weekend. And now the question is, from the Iranian perspective, is how do you respond to this? And also, do you have to be careful that your response, because what's very interesting, the U.S. did the strikes and then they announced a ceasefire, right? That's it. I think the Iranians have to be very careful how they respond to this, because I don't think they want the ceasefire to collapse.
But you can't. Yeah, and I understand. I think both sides don't want to. I'm playing devil's advocate here because my position is that both sides want the war to end. They're just trying to get the right terms and trying to show escalation dominance, try to force the other side to concede more. But you said the point. The Americans attacked and they said, okay, this is it. We want to go back to the ceasefire. Immediately, the White House commented, saying this should not collapse the ceasefire. Right. Trump will probably say something similar right now. We had to retaliate. We have to protect our men and women. But the deal should still happen imminently. And he's been saying a deal was imminent for weeks. But he's been really that tone has been.
There was that CNN. What was it? The CNN for ever since the ceasefire was announced, they've been it's almost over 2 to 3 dozen times they've announced that a deal is imminent. We've just seen this over and over and over and over again. It's just this idea that I think from the U.S. perspective, from the White House perspective, I think there's some tensions in the White House. Just as we've alluded to in the Iranian aspect, right? These different camps, and maybe one camps are much more hawkish, others are much more dovish. Some of them, the more moderates, probably much more interested in reaching a deal with the U.S. Elements within the IRGC are much more hawkish, and they don't. I think there's a similar dynamic within the Trump administration, and each camp within the Trump administration leverages a journalist to kind of push a narrative. So, for example, Axios, it does look like some of the sources to me are more like your J.D. Vance camp, your Steve Witkoff, your Jared Kushner's, more that are leading the diplomatic side, right? That are trying to push messaging and narratives to say, well, and maybe it's not, I think people are saying was to manipulate the oil markets. It could also just be to kind of manipulate the information space and to give impetus and to try to say, let's give negotiation a chance. And then other camps who are probably a little bit more hawkish are going to leverage other organizations and media to kind of push that narrative similar to Iran. But at the end of the day, that's just kind of how it is. I think I'm really interested to see how the Iranians respond. I'm extremely interested to see how they
Azia will be joining us, by the way, in a couple of minutes to give us your thoughts. So all 3 of us can talk a bit and getting her thoughts on this, because she's been talking about how we've been, back and forth on the. She's talking on the spaces as well, trying to analyze how the Iranians would respond. What would you consider a disproportionate response from the Iranians? Something that the US will then have to respond again, versus something that is expected that shows tit for tat at the end of it.
I don't necessarily think of it as a quantity. I think it's more if there's a casualty. I think if an American,
I think the casualty will indicate. All right, so we have a response already happening right now.
Okay.
So reports at least 3 ballistic missiles launched from Komeyan Markazi province. So the Iranians, as you said, the Iranians will have to retaliate quickly, and they are. So we're getting multiple reports now of Iranian ballistic missiles launching towards I don't know where yet. Let's see where they're heading. Where are my phones? Let me turn off my Bluetooth, because if I have my Bluetooth on, then it will disconnect if the alert goes on, if they're attacking the UAE, which I doubt they are. But if the alert goes on, considering the scale of the American attack, how likely do you think that they use in UAE base for this attack?
I think it would be within. I don't know, but it would be within the realm of possibility. Yeah,
there is.
The 3 ballistic missiles. So I guess the question is, how many is the total launches? And I think that's the aspect. I'm also in the same as you, trying to figure out
who the target is. I just turned off my connection, my thing. There's been a lot of satellite images of aircraft used that have been over American aircraft over Saudi, Prince Sultan Air Base. So the Saudi might have been used pretty heavily in this attack. I wouldn't be surprised if the UAE's been part of it. The base he's been part of it, because the UAE has been very strict about Iran not controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And this attack does show that they want to degrade Iran's ability to control the strait. They don't want to degrade the objective of degrading Iran's military in general as a whole, which was the objective of the war. That doesn't seem to be the objective anymore. They've downgraded the objective to something more realistic, which is degrading Iran's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz. Not saying it's going to work, saying just this makes more sense as an objective than the objective of the initial war. So if that's the case, then this is something that does advance the interests of all Gulf countries. I wouldn't be surprised if most, if not all, except probably Oman, played a role in this attack, played a role as in indirectly allowing the US bases there or their bases to be used for the attack.
I mean, the Iranians have said that that's the standard they use for retaliation, right? And so I think what we need to see is who does Iran target, and then that's probably a good indicator of like this. And okay, now we have an understanding of where these operations were launched from. But I also think the Iranians, as you alluded to, are concerned about. I think they are concerned about the UAE angle. I think they don't want the UAE to themselves retaliate as they have in the past. So to me, if we're going to see strikes, generally the areas that we see strikes where they do that is mostly Kuwait. And then Bahrain.
I think if the UAE, I disagree. I think if the UAE was used for an attack, the bases, they
would respond.
The UAE will be attacked. They've shown if they cared about Emirati attacks, if the Iranians cared about it, Stefano, I think they would have stopped attacking the UAE throughout the war as soon as the UAE retaliated. If anything, despite the Emirati retaliation, if anything, that convinced or encouraged Iran to strike Emiratis even stronger. And we've seen that throughout the entire war, including Project Freedom. So in this case, I think the targeting is based on what's happening behind the scenes, because we might see, we had reports, unconfirmed. Khan Youth is the only one to report it. And they claimed that it was reported in Iranian media, and that's where they got the information from, but we couldn't find the initial report. So I think it's BS, but we had reports that the UAE had a plane take off with $3 billion cash to Iran. I doubt this is true, but all I'm saying is that there could be things happening behind the scenes that could play a role in who Iran targets. So it's not only which bases are being used, but so far we're getting more information on the attack. We're getting footage, videos. KK will show them now on the screen. Ozzy, what do you make?
Also, I got something, if I may, from Fox News.
Go ahead.
If I may, this is from Jennifer Griffin from Fox News. A senior U.S. official tells Fox News that it was 20 targets inside of Iran were targeted tonight. Though U.S. strikes have ended, according to CENTCOM, the situation is still active, and U.S. military prepared to respond if Iran decides to retaliate. So let me just say that one more time.
They'll always say that. They'll always say that.
Right. Well, true in a way. But I think what's interesting is 20 targets, right? I think now we have a quantifiable number of whether the targets, how many that we hit. I think at the 20 target area, I think some of these others that are a little bit more out. I mean, I did see the Avos. It just seemed weird. I think where we're seeing the vast majority is kind of centered around the Straits of Hormuz. We saw the U.S. CENTCOM. The areas that were targeted specifically, I'll just kind of read it. I mean, there's a good map from, and if there's that can show it from OSIN Technical. He has a map that kind of lays out where exactly.
You can send it to KK. He'll
I'll pull it up and I'll let you go to Ozzy so that maybe, because I think
Ozzy, what do you?
These are the areas that were targeted.
Additional footage of ballistic missiles from Khomeini. There's a lot of footage of missiles being launched from Khomeini. I don't know how many missiles yet. But Ozzy,
hey,
to chat to you, what do you make of the scale of the American attack first, before we talk about how you think Iran would negotiate? Give us a brain dump.
So we were in the space talking about this, because I wonder, when CENTCOM says proportional, right? The reports of one Apache helicopter and then the massive scale of response. Of course, it's America, so Trump's got to show the American might. But I'm still trying to, I guess, assess whether this is an escalation to de-escalate. If you remember, Mario and Stefano, several weeks ago, Israel had come out and said, and I think the US kind of doubled back on this. They said that they already knew their targets that they wanted to hit. Okay, so we all assumed that at some point some escalation was going to happen for some targets to be hit. CENTCOM, Trump, they've all said that they had already these planned target locations, right? Stefano, you were mentioning Ahvaz. There's significance in Ahvaz, and you're right. It started coastal, so we assumed that it was all the Navy, those drones. One of the locations, Sirik, that they hit is very significant because that's where those speedboats, where those mining boats are, right?
Yeah,
so
the underground. Malcolm was saying, it's like underground tunnels where they also hide.
Correct. So they have those locations there. Ahvaz is significant because you have more of your ground operations, your ground forces, those IRGC bases there. And there's also an oil refinery there, of course, too. And some of the locations that they hit along the coastline, also they hit some of the oil depots there. So it almost seems like
they hit the oil depots. I didn't see that.
One of them they hit an oil oil. So
interesting.
It seems like it's kind of killed two birds with one stone. So in Ahvaz, that is rich with, that's a heavy oil area, but there's also those IRGC on the ground operations, including some of the Nizam sites, because the Nizam really hasn't been discussed throughout this entire war, right, guys? It's all just IRGC bases, IRGC Basij bases, etc. So it almost seems like they're trying to decapitate them a little bit more to push them to the point of accepting the deal that's on the table. That's the only thing that I can, at this moment, this is what I think. I don't know, Stefano, maybe you're wrong. I know
at least 6 missiles were launched, brother. At least 6 missiles were launched. 1 has failed and 5 are still on their way to an unknown target. And a drone wave is being launched right now, is being reported. 1 wave is targeting Erbil, Kurdistan. They don't leave Erbil alone every freaking day. But sorry to interrupt you, Azi.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, so so what Stefano was saying earlier, which I found very interesting, he built on something that I asked him a question. I said, if this is a clearing operation, because one of my previous guests, Brandon Weicker, said, Murray, this is looking more and more like a clearing operation. That was in wave 1 or 2 when he said that. And we've seen like 3 waves. And no, it's in wave 1 where he said that. And we've seen 2 waves, the second wave being a very long wave. And the reason he said that is because of the extent of the attack, the scale of it. And Stefano said, if it was, Stefano doesn't think it is, but if it was, it will be a clearing operation to allow the US more control over the Strait of Hormuz, or to degrade Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz in case the negotiations fail. A lot of people do believe the negotiations are about to fail. So Iran has less capabilities to control the straits, or less capabilities to intercept ships. So Trump cares about the global economy and the price of oil, the vessels going through. So degrading Iranian capabilities of being able to intercept ships, which the Energy Secretary of Energy today, Mr. Wright, said that there's a significant amount, or very significant amount, of ships going through, and that's what led to the oil price collapsing. That's probably what Trump's objective is. He wants to ensure that oil stays down. If that's what it takes, that's what it will take. He doesn't care about anything else. He doesn't care about the attacks on Bahrain. He doesn't care about the attacks on Kuwait. He doesn't care about the attacks on Israel, because across all these attacks by Iran, the retaliation has been limited. But when it comes about oil, and striking ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, that's his red line.
See, Mario, speaking of that oil and that red line there, when Trump came out and said earlier today, I think you saw the report, you were talking about this earlier as well, that there was going to be some kind of deal worked out. America was going to help them rebuild some of their infrastructure. But Trump very explicitly said, we were going to get half of their oil. Do you remember seeing that?
I saw that. I saw that was yesterday, 2 days ago, I think. Yeah.
So all day I've been wondering, okay, he's going to get half of his oil, but what does that really mean? There's multiple ways you can actually dissect that statement. Take half of their oil, literally, you're going to take their oil, or are you going to actually assume their oil, or are you going to take their capabilities to sell their oil? Like, what are you going to do with, we're going to take their oil? Do you understand what I'm saying? You can take that phrase or that statement, and you can look at it from multiple different directions. Given where we are now, it's kind of interesting to me. Was that seed planting by Trump saying, we're going to take out their oil, literally, we're going to take out half of their oil? I don't know. You see what I'm saying?
When he said we're going to take half of their oil, so the way I saw it, hold on, senior U.S. officials tells Fox News, this is what you're saying, by the way, Stefano, earlier, tells me 20 targets inside Iran were targeted tonight. Those strikes have ended. On that point, Ozzy, so the way I took it is that he wants a 50% cut for the US, even for him.
That's
and his
how I
family.
initially took it too, Mario.
But you're saying is maybe he wants to destroy 50% of the oil facilities, infrastructure, which I'd be surprised because then the Gulf is fucked. But on the point, I don't know if it's confirmed that he struck their oil infrastructure. I haven't even seen unconfirmed reports of that, so I'm not sure. Would you know what the source of that would be?
I'm gonna find it because we were actually in the space. We give me a second, I'll find it right now. But we were talking through it because we talked through. I mean, it was even confirmed by Iran at some point as well.
I know that two water tanks were struck in a village.
Yeah, that was early on. That was wave one.
That one I saw.
Wave two was when they came out and said that they hit one of.
So as you check for this, Stefano, 20 missiles. I think that fits your. Not 20 missiles. I'll take it back. That's 20 sites that was struck. Yeah. Sorry. 6 missiles so far. 5. One has failed. 5 missiles so far. Obviously, we're going to see more waves. At least 3 ballistic missiles have been launched. So 3 to 5. What do you make of the attack so far? Fucking stupid question because it's a very small attack. It just started. But hey, I can ask questions.
We just need more time. We just need more time. I mean, the only thing I'm interested in a little bit is that we got videos earlier that showed ballistic missile launches. Could have been that they were misidentified as surface-to-air missiles. Could it be that they were targeting like maybe the Iraqi Kurdistan region? We don't know. Maybe they were failures. Maybe they were older videos circulating. But I think we just need time before we jump in. I don't want to make an assessment right now when the situation is still ongoing. If you were to tell me, Mario, this is it, I mean, then now we have the situation over the weekend with Israel. And now the situation right now with the United States, which is clearly, look, neither side wants to end the ceasefire, but Israel and the United States have their threshold to target Iran is very low, and the Iranian ability to respond to it, I think they're concerned that might cause a collapse of the ceasefire. They don't want it, right? From an escalation managed ladder perspective, it just showed that maybe the United States would have the upper hand, Israel would have the upper hand. But we have to wait to see what other targets might happen. It's still too early, and we need more time.
A stupid question deserves a stupid answer. Sorry for the stupid question. It's like 2 minutes into the attack. What do you think, Stefano?
Exactly. Yeah, right. It's like, it's like a football game, right? They're the NBA finals, like 2 minutes in. All right, well, who's going to win? It's like,
who's going to win? Who's going to win? Exactly.
Give it a second.
By the way, as we're waiting for more information on, let me ask Ozzy, as you're still checking for that source. Ozzy, one thing I asked Stefano, and I think most people are wondering right now, is what do you think Iran will strike? And do you think we will see a de-escalatory strike as they did the second wave against Israel? Or would we see Iran trying to send a message saying, hey, we're going to maintain escalation dominance?
I've been thinking about where they could strike. They said U.S. bases, right? Do you guys remember when the first wave started, there were a few reports that came out that it was unconfirmed, of course, and then we kind of skid past it. But there was a report that I remember that Bahrain had struck Iran. And I thought that was I paused for a second. Do you guys remember? It was the first wave. It was, I guess, right when I had just finished the interviews with Matthew and Kareem and was jumping on the space. And I was tracking it. So I'm trying to remember the timeline there. But I remember seeing several reports that there were alleged missiles going from, or drones going from Bahrain. And I thought, that's really odd. And it could have been from, Iran state media. If that is true, or they think that it's true, I would assume perhaps even Bahrain could be one of those locations. What I also think is odd, and Stefano, we were talking about this on the space earlier as well, when we're trying to kind of war game this and see where could they possibly hit. There was a Emirati plane that landed in Mehrabad airport. Now, I don't want to get into the conversation about whether there was cash on it or not, but it was confirmed that an Emirati plane landed. And that was very fascinating to me because, given the relationship and what we've seen over the last month or so, or 3 weeks with between Emiratis, UAE and Iran, I thought that was kind of odd that the only plane they would allow for a specific purpose, they said it was a specific purpose. It was an exception to the rule because they had cleared out their entire airspace. They had canceled all their flights. I thought it was odd. So I don't know. Would they hit the UAE? I don't know at this point, Mario.
There's
Because
okay, so there's reports of alerts in Bahrain, and the IRG just said they attacked Bahrain again. So
okay, see,
unsurprisingly,
okay,
Bahrain's being attacked. But
I'm
no,
not.
Bahrain's been attacked
Yeah,
all the time. Bahrain's been attacked all the time, and every single
right,
attack on by the Iranians for the last few weeks. Just
right.
a quick, on the point of that. That was Khan News that reported it. So the report initially, so I didn't know there were satellite confirmations of trackers seeing a plane land from the Emirates in Iran. Couldn't that just be negotiators?
Well, their own
going out?
aviation also confirmed it.
Okay, yeah. So now I'm saying it wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure if you're referring to the Khan News report of money, $3 billion. Oh, not
Yeah,
that one.
I'm
Okay.
ignoring that one. That's why I said
Me
forget
too.
whatever was
Me
on
too.
there.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. Oh,
I'm
okay,
talking
okay.
about
Yeah, me
an
too.
actual plane landing, though. That was
I think
that
there
was
is. I think
absolutely
there's efforts from everything I've seen. I haven't confirmed it with anyone yet. I'm not having to time to talk to anyone privately, but I've seen. I wouldn't be surprised. Sorry, I haven't seen anything. I wouldn't be surprised if the Emiratis are working to improve relationship with Iran. They have no choice. They cannot fight Iran. They don't have the military capabilities to stand up to Iran and make an enemy out of Iran. They saw how this war went. So my position is that the Emirates have decided, despite being attacked more than any other country throughout this war, they've made the decision to slowly improve relations with Iran because they used to have good relations with them. So, and if you look at the fact that they haven't been attacked in so many weeks while Bahrain and Kuwait are being struck, the UAE was their number one go-to target. No matter what happened, we go to the UAE. For the first time in 2 weeks, till now, up to now, especially if they don't strike it now, I think there's something happening behind the scenes between the Emirates and Iran, where the Emirates is taking the more pragmatic path of improving relations with Iran. Sirens have been sounded. Citizens and residents in Bahrain are urged to remain calm and head to the nearest safe place. Let's see how significant that is. There is another wave of attacks, by the way, wave of missiles being launched. Play that video. Can you play it again, KK? Let's see how many show in that. Let's show the military expert, Stefano. Okay, that one just shows one missile. Quick question, Stefano. Why do we see the Iranian attacks in waves of 2 or 3 missiles? What's the purpose of that? Why not have 10 missiles fired all at once?
I think it's just the degradation, right? They just don't have the ability to mass. So multiple reasons. One, they've been degraded to mass. 2, it's also a survivability method as well, right? They don't want to concentrate a significant amount. But even in that aspect, because I would significant that they are only able to launch a very small amount of missiles at one time to launch it. So that does show they don't have as many launchers available to launch a large salvo of attacks at once. Unlike what we saw during the first day of the war, which was probably the most the Iranians were able to concentrate combat power.
You're cutting out, Stefano.
From my perspective, was very worrisome is that drop.
KK, yeah, just check your connection quickly. KK, if you could just do a quick check.
Did you get me back?
Yeah, we heard everything you said, though. 11 explosions so far reported in Bahrain. So I don't know if that's air defense activity or impact. We will see. But the fact that everything was fired to Bahrain, is it fair to say if all the firepower was just on Bahrain and Kuwait, Iran is not looking to escalate? Now, putting aside the number of missiles, just from a targeting perspective, if it's only Kuwait and Bahrain, is it fair to say that this is not escalatory? And to escalate, it has to be UAE or Saudi to show, hey, we're going to take it to a new level, all involving the Houthis.
And not only would I say that, but for the most part, I wouldn't be surprised if the areas that the Iranians are targeting are military bases that the U.S. have that have already been, for the most part, evacuated. And it just showed the Iranians are saying we're doing a strike, right? For the most part, Fifth Fleet, if you're targeting Bahrain, it's Fifth Fleet. That's not an active naval base right now for the United States.
Kuwait is active.
It would be interesting where there's some, obviously a lot of them were removed as well. There's some, but for the most part, if they only target Bahrain and Kuwait where they've done that in the past already, I wouldn't look too much into it. It was interesting. One of the last attacks that happened, it was just
initial reports of an impact at the US NSA Bahrain base, according to locals.
Right, that's Fifth Fleet. That's Fifth Fleet. That's Fifth Fleet. Naval support activity Bahrain. That's Fifth Fleet headquarters, but that place has been abandoned. Like that place got hit multiple times during the war. Right. I mean, this place has been super abandoned. And so it goes back to, and to your other point, like I said, the fact that the Iranians have only been able to launch 3 missiles, and that's really all we see. Again, it just shows a degradation of their military capabilities. And what we saw during the war, the first day of the war, that's when the most amount of combat power the Iranians were able to push forward against the United States, against Israel, against the region. That clearly they haven't been able to replicate that. So the fact that they only launched very small quantities shows that they don't have that many capabilities yet.
So I was told it could also be not only about from a capabilities perspective, they would do it from a strategic perspective. Because they want to make sure that the missile launchers are not spotted. So when they get the missile launchers out, fire a few missiles, bring it back, another few missile launchers, fire missiles. From a strategic perspective, it could make more sense. Also, take into consideration that one of the objectives that they have is to keep degrading their air defense munitions. So even if there is an impact, just the fact that the Emiratis or the Bahrainis or the Qataris or Kuwaitis have to fire, Americans in the region have to fire PAC-3s or THAAD missiles, that's enough to achieve Iran's objective, because these are heavily, heavily depleted. What do you think, Azzy?
I agree with you also, Mario. And I don't know if you just saw this, but there are multiple reports coming out that some of those missiles impacted the USA, the US's NSA Bahrain base. Did you see that one?
Yeah, the fifth. Yeah, there's explosions in Kuwait right now as well.
Okay.
Stefan, I don't know if you're still there, but there's explosions in Kuwait. I don't know if you can hear us. Your video's off.
Yeah.
But there's more
it
than
looks
a
like
dozen
what,
explosions.
19? I'm seeing 19 explosions right now, Mario.
Yeah, so there it is. 19 explosions altogether, 12 new ones. So total 19 explosions so far in Bahrain alone. In Kuwait, I don't know how many explosions yet, but there's been reports of explosions. I don't know if the alerts has gone off in Kuwait as well. I'm just trying to get more information on that. But it's too
Mario,
early to tell us what I said earlier.
Do you know what I find is interesting, though? Just like Sunday, remember Trump was busy talking about what's going on in California instead of saying anything about this. Trump right now is still, when I look at his Truth Social, he's still just completely disconnected from everything going on over there. He's talking about elections and campaigns and, endorsing candidates. So I think that's also kind of telling where we stand on this. Otherwise, you would see him make some kind of formal response, don't you think?
Yeah, if I was saying this earlier, let me go to his comments. The reason I keep posting and I keep getting criticized by some that the war is over is just looking at the rhetoric from Trump. Obviously, Trump lies. We all know that politicians lie all the time. All politicians lie all the time. Trump lies a lot more than any other politician. But he also does speak his mind. When he's pissed off, he's pissed off. When he wants to off-ramp, it makes it obvious. When he starts saying, I'm going to fire nuclear weapons, didn't say that, but hints at it, and I'm going to wipe out a civilization, it just looks obvious he's going to off-ramp, because he's not going to do that. That kills the global economy, US economy, Gulf, etc. So for me, at least, Trump is pretty transparent in where his mind is at. Well, if you look at his comments, he said to, I think, NBC reporter, they asked him, you said the US must respond to the Apache shoot down. Do you still feel that way? He says, I don't have to do anything. We hold all the cards. I don't have to do. But look, we probably will, okay? They can't be doing that. That was Trump's comment. And then Trump told ABC News Sunday's Israeli counterattack on Iran was unnecessary. But then he understood why Israel did it. So he's talking about the counterattack on Israel. Sorry, put that aside. I saw you disappear, so I got distracted. Then she told
it's okay.
ABC,
I lost audio. I had to leave and come back.
No, oh good. There's an open question whether Netanyahu will run for election. Okay, he's talking about Netanyahu. If you look at his comments earlier, let me see if I had them saved. I was going through them in earlier interviews in the morning. Well, his post about the attack. I've just been informed by our great military that the helicopter was attacked. And then he says there were two, and then he says the sophisticated Apache helicopter was attacked while patrolling, blah, blah. There were two pilots involved. Both are safe and uninjured. Nevertheless, the US must, of necessity, respond to this attack. To me, that just shows he doesn't want to escalate. He's saying, look, I have to do this. I have to show strength. And if I had to guess, once this is over, he'll come out and say, oh, there was nothing. We had to respond to show strength. I don't think the Iranians will respond. The Iranians already responded. Whatever the Iranians do, unless it's something very significant, he's going to dismiss it, like he did to the strike on Fujairah after Project Freedom, like he did on the strike in Israel as well.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, Mario, is, okay, they had the strikes back, you had the Israel-Iran side on Sunday, and now we have the US-Iran side. Does it almost feel like there needs to be some kind of closure? So Iran and Israel had to have their chance and their moment, and now we've got Iran and US having their moment. I don't know. It somehow just has this energy about it. I don't know, Stefano, if you heard me, what you think about that. Because it's just
feels like this is like a fine, like it's kind of the, so you feel also this is like a final showdown before it all comes to an end.
That I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've been wrong before, but
I would say I think the reason, like, why was the Apache? Look. Let's take the reports at face value, right? Like, what happened and why the U.S. did this. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that the Iranians shot down with the 358 missile. The 358 missile, if that's the one, is an anti-air missile.
That's right? It's an not missile drone. No.
Yeah, it's a drone. It's a drone, but I mean, okay, it's a drone. It's a drone missile. It has loitering capability. Like, I mean, not semantics. I'm not going to get into that. Just from my previous experience, like, for me, a 358 has always been a missile.
You should just to be clear, Stefan. Before you continue, you should. I know you're always very secretive about your previous experience. You're starting to leak it slowly, more and more. Finally, after all these years, but I think you should share it a bit more so people understand.
Right.
You have your belief, but you have a lot of effing knowledge in that area.
Right. So my background was so basically my previous job was I worked for a military unit, a U.S. Army Air Defense unit. And my job was I basically was an Op4 analyst, an opposing force analyst, and an intelligence planner. So my job was to basically replicate the threats air defenders would face in military exercises. And a large focus of mine was the Iranian ballistic missile program. Specifically the Al Gadir Missile Command, and kind of study them and how they would fight, and so that's kind of my background and why I'm kind of very intimately familiar with this kind of construct in this phase.
This is the possible impact, by the way, in Bahrain. Just to be clear, that's the Fleet headquarters.
So the thing though, Ozzy,
sorry, go ahead. I'll let you ask your question. I want to ask you, just sorry before I forget, and you respond to Ozzy.
I've not been to NAVSAT. I've not been to NAVSAT.
Oh, you haven't been. It's a massive, it's a massive base from what I've been told.
It's a pretty big base, but the one that I was at, I'm in the region. The one that I've been in was probably the most was the KAOK. The KAOK is huge. The KAOK is an Al Udeid Air Base.
Okay.
Al Udeid Air Base. So under Al Udeid Air Base, the U.S. side, there's the KAOK, the Combined Air Operations Center. The KAOK is basically the head, like that area that would control the fight, the air fight for the Middle East. I was there, and I've been to other places, obviously, while I was there in the Middle East. But what I would say is, Ozzy, to your point, what I think is, like, why was the helicopter shot down? And what to me it indicates is that the U.S. effort to break the blockade, the Iranian closure of the Straits of Hormuz, was working. That merchant vessels were able to go through. Mario brought up an interesting point from some economists and traders indicating that the price of oil is not skyrocketing so much because it looks like it's going through. We got interesting reports from the UAE that indicated that they're able to export to almost very close to pre-war levels, that they managed to break through kind of this Iranian closure of the Straits of Hormuz. Obviously, we got a lot of reports from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and others saying that the U.S. military was a much more active component in breaking the Iranian closure of the Straits of Hormuz, regardless of CENTCOM saying, denying this isn't true, we're not resuming it. There is, and we've got steady reports. There's a lot of data that indicates that the U.S. in many aspects is winning the battles of the Straits of Hormuz. It's just happening in the shadows. And I think the shooting down of the Apache helicopter was probably because of that, because we do know from reporting that the Apache helicopters were a very active component, not only from the U.S. media, but from British media, was a key component of opening the Straits of Hormuz. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence that indicates that maybe there are some clashes happening in the Straits of Hormuz that's not necessarily getting reported. I'm not fully believing that, but there are some very interesting tidbits in there. And I think that's why they shot down the Apache helicopters. And the U.S. said, we're not going to go unanswered.
Yeah. I want to jump in here. I think all the points you've made are valid. I just don't think that the Americans are winning the battle for the Strait of Hormuz. I think the argument that some ships are going through is not because of the military capabilities of the U.S. in the Straits. It's because the U.S. and Iran are letting them go through. So the economists I spoke to earlier today, I think I spoke to two. It's very blurry for me. But both of them were making the same argument, or one yesterday, one today, is that the Americans are not blockading it as much as expected. The Iranians are letting through ships that pay the fee, and the Americans are letting those through instead of intercepting them. So it's more willingly letting through ships in order to get a deal, but in
Right,
order
then
to
why
keep the
would the
price of oil
U.S.
depressed.
publicly? Then why would the U.S. publicly conduct airstrikes and announce them? And I mean, we say, they say, look, I
Airstrikes
think
now, you mean the airstrikes now?
no, the one against the naval, the merchant vessel, the Palau flag merchant vessel. Recently, there was a strike. They conducted an airstrike against.
Yeah,
the
but this
Palau
is
vessel.
one. There's multiple. Yeah, but there's multiple vessels going through. There's
They've been
multiple
doing that.
deceptions.
They've been doing that for weeks, guys.
Yeah.
Remember, like, we're seeing this on a regular basis. It's a
The
nothing
blockade is
burger
not
at this
fully
point.
open. The blockade is not fully
Right.
open. They're picking and choosing,
Right.
but there's more ships going through than radars are showing. This is why the price of oil is so low.
Right,
There's a lot
but
more
I
oil
think-
getting into the market. But I don't.
Right.
Again, the reason I don't think this is you're the military expert, but the reason I don't think this is America's military mind is pretty like we just saw one drone bring down a helicopter. We know the US is not ready for drone warfare. Everybody I spoke with, including the most hawkish people, including Admiral Mark Montgomery, who's one of the very few guests on my show that says the US can open the Strait of Hormuz and goes through exactly what it would take to be able to control the Strait of Hormuz. And he's been saying that for months. What disappoints him and upsets him the most is how unprepared the US is at the moment for drone warfare. And he starts breaking down why, etc., and how they can deal with it and all that. And this is what Iran has to be able to.
If you want me to get into a conversation, and I will explain to him in extensive. Look, is there things that the U.S. can improve on? Absolutely. The 358 is, people call it a drone. It's a missile. In reality, the way it operates, it's more of a missile. It's a surface-to-air missile. It's a loitering munition.
Whatever you call it,
not,
if the Bab,
right,
what I'm trying to say, if the Houthis were able to close the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, of course the Iranians are going to be able to close the Strait of Hormuz much easier.
Okay, can I add something real quick here? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Stefano. Go ahead.
No, what I'm gonna say is just in this aspect. What I was just gonna say is the shoot down of the Apache helicopter by a 358 is not something that's earth shattering from a military capability, right? That helicopters have been shot down in Afghanistan by the Taliban, right? I mean, it's not this revolutionary concept and this revolutionary capability. Now, did the United States conduct strikes to degrade some of this? Absolutely. What I think the problem is, and I think from people are trying to say, well, like, I think there's this mentality that there's an equilibrium in both sides, and how they're trying to analyze it is from an equilibrium perspective. I think the thing is, the Iranian oil is not going to be the determining factor for prices. It is the ones from the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and they're able to bypass it through the south. I think there's a lot more that's going on without being reported. The Iranians
There's a new wave. So it's just quickly, just for the audience. I'll let you, there's a new wave. No, just a new wave of missiles being fired by Iran. Just for the audience, we'll keep giving you updates as they come in. That was just fired, unconfirmed, from Isfahan. Yeah, from Isfahan. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Stefano.
So I think there's this idea that it's like, and again, it goes back to the argument that I would make during the weekend. There is not an equilibrium here. And I will gladly debate the drone warfare debate all day, every day. And that's a separate conversation that I think people misconstrue from a deep strike capability at the tactical level and how things adjust and come. Can the U.S. learn some things? Absolutely. But there's a difference between how Russia and Ukraine utilize the drones and how the U.S. and Iran do it and all these other things. But that's not the realm of this conversation. I think we cannot ignore the fact that the Apache helicopter was shot down. And I think that was a deliberate choice by Iran. And that the reason why they shot down the Apache helicopter was because they acknowledged and recognized that it's one of the key platforms that the United States has been using to bypass the Iranian closure of the Straits of Hormuz, specifically through the southern route. And it's to the point where it's undermining Iranians' negotiation positions. And they're trying to get a win specifically within the hardliners. And I think that's why we're at this space. But Ozzy, I know you wanted to jump in.
I'm far from it. Yeah, I'll let you jump in, Ozzy. Just to let my position is very far from this. I really, yeah.
I want to read. I want to read this. I want to read this. I'm sure we all looked at this and read it a dozen times. But as you two were discussing this, it compelled me to go back and read it again. But when the news originally came out, okay, from whether it was AP, Axios, Wall Street Journal, etc. It was a confirmed, so there was confirmation that the drone hit the Apache helicopter, okay? But the U.S. official actually said, it was a senior U.S. official that said that the investigation determined the collision caused the crash but it remains unclear still, even to U.S. officials, whether that strike or collision was intentional. The officials noted that the crowded airspace and maritime environment leaving open possibilities of either deliberate targeting, reckless action, human error, or accident, right? So here's where I stand on it. If the US's position was definitively that Iran targeted that Apache helicopter and it was 100% intentional, even if it's for optics, they would have come out and said that it is intentional. Trump's position was he blamed Iran, but if you go back and also read his language, he blamed Iran, but he wasn't saying explicitly that Iran is trying to, start shit with us and start a war again with us. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think there's relevance.
I think that's a misconception. I have two reasons for that. One, it could be from a narrative perspective. They don't want the narrative, right, to go there. But two, I think it's also a misconception.
But there's a reason they don't want the narrative to go there either.
But I would agree with you.
No, just let me add to it as well. Just on this point as well, it could be as simple as the Apache helicopter was shooting down drones that were targeting a ship, and one of the drones hit the helicopter. Now, I know that you're saying we don't know what drone it is. I know we talked about one of them being designed to strike helicopters, but we don't know if this is it. This is one of my guests speculated this was the drone. We don't know what type of drone it is. We barely know we don't know if it was intentional or accidental, let alone what drone it is. And there was the latest report when I read it, Stefano, before Ozzy joined, when the Fox News or CNN reported that Trump did not initially want to attack, but after he was briefed, and in the brief, they said to him, even if whether or not it was intentional, we still need to respond as this is significant. So that report, similar to the one Ozzy's reading, also hints is maybe they're trying to control the rhetoric and not look bad. But I think if it was intentional, they probably would say it to justify that level of attack. And for them to attack to this extent, Stefano, and to still say, we don't know if it's intentional or not, is pointing more and more that this was accidental. And maybe this is an attack that was being discussed over time. And they're like, look, this is our opportunity. We've been planning this for a while to mow the lawn or degrade their capabilities of the Strait of Hormuz to keep hitting those ships. They've been striking those radars occasionally. They're like, you know what? Gives us a lot more leeway to do more than we did previously. Let's strike more of their radars. These tunnels that have these fast attack boats, these drone bases, there's no drone bases, but all these different facilities that allow them to intercept the ships so more ships can go through, so oil remains low, so we get an upper hand in the negotiations. That's how I see it. Others might say they're trying to bait the Iranians into full-blown war, but considering my position that the war is over, obviously I'm not in that camp.
I mean, that Apache was only there also to just secure the traffic. It wasn't intended for anything else. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Isn't that what we also
to intercept drones
determined on that? Well, not even just to intercept drones. It was just there to monitor. I'm looking at it now too.
Expertise, what the Apache.
What would it look like, Stefano? I mean, yeah, go ahead.
What I would say, if we're talking about the three, I agree with. So if it's a 358, it's not an accident. Now, I think the confusion. Look, when people say senior officials, with all due respect, one who's a senior official, because if it's a civilian, they don't know. They don't know. That's not their job. It's not their job to know who this person is or who that person is. Right? Even if you get intelligence briefing, that's not your area of expertise. Right. So I can understand how people look at 358. People say it's a drone. It's really more of a missile, but people call it the drone and they're like, oh, well, maybe it was an accident. It's like, well, no, the 358 is a surface to air. Like there's no, ladies and gentlemen.
So just if I got some updates, Iranian state media reports the U.S. Al-Azraq base in Jordan was also targeted in the attack.
See, you know what that's from? That's from Sunday.
Yeah, reported interception attempts at Muwafaq Salti Air Base. Two bases. The Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Eastern Jordan. MSAB. And the US Al-Azraq base in Jordan. And Al-Azraq base too.
Didn't Iran blame
that's
Jordan?
Right?
I don't. You're asking me.
Wasn't Iran upset that Israel or somebody used Jordanian airspace?
Yes, exactly. I think this is related to the Israeli.
It's the eye for an eye strategy. That's Iran's. That's their MO of eye for eye. They need to look. They need to save face. So let's just say that this is a, last hurrah, and, we're escalating to de-escalate and all of the other things, and perhaps, some kind of deal is in the works. In terms of the internal dynamics of inside of Iran, you've got hardliners, you've got the non-hardliners. We can put everybody else in the non-hardliner camp, whether they're reformists, progressives, etc. They're gonna have to save face at some point, and especially with all the rallies that we're seeing at night, or the rhetoric that we're seeing that Iran is standing strong, etc. The IRGC is standing strong. Islamic Republic of Iran is still standing. They have to continue that eye for an eye ideology. Like it's part of all of it. So if they hit Jordan or an air base, or a US base in Jordan, that matches with that eye for an eye.
It seems that so there's a report he updated. The reason the alerts in the Gulf took so long is because the target was actually Jordan. The initial 4 missiles launched from Khamenei were aimed at Jordan and arrived more than 30 minutes ago. Muwafaq al-Salti Air Base in eastern Jordan, somewhat remote, so no sirens sounded, explaining the delay in reporting. So yeah, well, that's I agree with your explanation of what Jordan was showing.
It's not 30 minutes. It's not 30 minutes from a ballistic missile launch from Iran to Jordan. But if it's MSAB, I can understand the remoteness of it. That I get.
How long would it take?
I've been to MSAB. I know.
How long would it take? Sorry.
I mean, it depends on the missile, but I don't know. Depending on where they launch from Iran, also. So if they launch from Western Iran,
Khomeini.
I would, dude, anything more than 10 minutes is way too much. Like it's a ballistic missile. These things fly fast. They go through the atmosphere. Like they're not. I think the reason why there was a delay is because I've been to MSAB. It's remote. It's remote.
Is it a big base? Significant?
Yeah, it's a big air base. Where MSAB played a key role during the counter-ISIS campaign in Iraq and Syria, a lot of countries in the U.S. and European countries would use MSAB to conduct airstrikes in Syria and Iraq against ISIS. That's why MSAB was such an important base, specifically for the counter-ISIS fight. So there's a lot of coalition countries there as well that would do.
Well, do you think they struck it? Do you think they struck it because of Jordan's involvement in either intercepting Iranian missiles targeting Israel, or allowing Jordan airspace to be used?
Jordan's a key ally of the U.S., so it goes to Ozzy's point from an eye for an eye. And now again, if you're telling me, it would be interesting to see, right? If there was 4 ballistic missiles that were launched there, and then there was drones launched against NAVCENT, and that's it. I mean, it kind of goes back to, the U.S. conducted strikes on 20 targets. That's a pretty significant amount of strikes that have been done. Actually, wait, can you? Yeah, so that's okay. So that's is that Jordan? That kind of looks like that isolated area of MSAB, because it's way out there. I think that's Jordan.
I'm muted. Yeah, it is. Sorry.
Yeah. It is? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what I would say is, again, we got to see how many strikes are going on. Interestingly enough, that you said Jordan has been targeted. I'm not.
But are you surprised that I don't get it. Saudi allowed their base to be used for strikes against Iran, yet Iran does not retaliate against Saudi. That's just bizarre, if that's the case. If either Saudi does not allow their bases to be used and Iran does not retaliate, or Saudi does allow their bases to be used, but Iran must retaliate unless there's some deal happening. One thing that what people don't understand is one thing I learned doing this is the amount of things we don't know. It is wild. The amount of discussions that go behind the scenes. You talk about the insider traders, etc. It's prolific. So there's a lot that is being discussed. Every day, probably there's calls between the Emiratis and the Iranians. Every day between the Saudis and the Iranians. Every day between every Gulf country and the Iranians. On a regular basis between the Israelis and the Gulf countries as well. The Americans and the Gulf countries. There's a lot more communication planning that we don't know about. So that's something to always take into consideration when we're trying to analyze all these different reports on why did they strike this, why didn't they strike that. So it's just an important piece. Footage shows air defense activity in American Muwafaq. Yeah, that's the one. That's the more confirmation of the base in Jordan being attacked. But that's have they attacked Jordan much during the war?
Jordan, yes, Jordan did not as much, I think, as others, but they did
Much
receive.
less.
Yeah, but they were struck. Yeah, actually, some of the satellite imageries in the beginning of the war, the radars, the U.S. air defense radars that were destroyed actually came from Jordan. There were some radars that the Iranians were able to destroy in Jordan. I believe there was actually about as THAADs also.
Now, I want to be clear. The price of WTI was $92 2 days ago. And now, despite everything we're seeing, it's at $87, $88, just under $88. It was as low as $85, almost below $85 earlier today. So the reason I say this, guys, is I understand there's a lot of room to be concerned. But if you look at the rhetoric coming out of Trump, the fact that the Israelis still haven't struck Beirut, despite everything they're saying, there was an infiltration in Israel today. Now, I understand Hezbollah didn't own up to it, didn't take responsibility, and it was most likely a lone actor that entered Israel. But the fact there was an infiltration in Israel, the fact that Israel is being struck daily by Hezbollah, and Israel still not responding against Beirut, the fact that Israel did not retaliate against Iran's last attack, the fact that Trump did not intercept Iranian missiles heading to Israel. So he did not even get involved in the attack between Israel and Iran, even defensively.
So there was some disagreement on that. There is some disagreement that there is even some additional reporting that maybe the American air defense in Israel did respond. But I wouldn't. Let me make this clear, just Mario. When people say that, that is not President Trump. That is when a missile is launched against a target in Israel, and there's U.S. and Israeli air defense system. That's the guys on the ground, and they're the ones who are going to decide who does what. And I would not read into that.
From what I know, there were orders from Trump explicitly not to get involved even defensively. Now, I'm sure there's limits. If Iran fires 50 ballistic missiles, I'm sure the U.S. would get involved. But within a certain parameters, Trump wanted to be out of this and wanted to make it clear for Netanyahu, you're on your own. The red line has been, I've mentioned this a lot on the show. Obviously, when I'm interviewing, I'm less explicit and assertive with it. But I'm very confident, and I've been saying this for a long time. Trump has drawn the red line for Netanyahu. Now, obviously, there's limits to it. I'm not sure whether he'll be able to convince Netanyahu to keep a ceasefire in Lebanon. We will get a ceasefire in Lebanon. I don't know if it will be a permanent ceasefire, because obviously Netanyahu is a wild card, especially when it comes to his political survival right now in Israel, which is under threat. IRGC just put out a statement, announced a drone attack on the Ali Al Salam air base in Kuwait, as expected, but drone attacks, nothing. And there's air defense activity in Amman, Jordan. So go ahead, Azi.
I just wanted to say, I looked it up while you guys were talking about this. It looks like it was around 300 was the total between missiles and drones to Jordan the entire time of the war.
Oh, wow. Sorry, they've attacked Jordan 300 times during the war.
Yeah, so it was 119 total between 60 missiles, 59 drones, the first week of the escalations, that first week. And then now by the third week, it was up to 240. And then by that early April, when we had that ceasefire or pause, as some also call it, it was around 281 to 300. 300 was the max that's reported.
Okay. Let me try to get numbers, the numbers of each country, but I think that's important just to see how this attack compares to previous attacks. So, hold on.
I wonder if Iran is also, trying to maintain their prevention mechanism in a way.
Air defense activity in Amman, by the way, Stefano. Sorry, go ahead. I saw just the amount of projectiles fired. Where's Jordan? These numbers. Okay. There's no. So go ahead, Azi. I'm trying to get the
numbers. It's okay. Well, while you're looking that up, I was saying that it just seems like the Iranians are trying to maintain their prevention mechanism. We talked about it a few minutes ago, that eye for an eye, that very controlled, calculated response. So for each attack, they sort of respond in a very calculated way. They don't want it to necessarily get out of control. They don't want the full war as well, just like I don't think US wants, or even Israel. I don't think Israel could even handle that with what's going on with Lebanon. But it just seems like all sides are just going right just enough to whether it's a show or not. I mean, Stefano, do you remember even during the spaces we did, sometimes it just felt like fireworks show. I don't know. It was almost just, I don't want to say comical because a lot of lives were lost and, a lot of destruction. And so I'm not making any light of any of it, but it just seems like, are you really going to war, or is this, where are we going from here? What are we really doing here?
Is that since the ceasefire?
It's just,
I mean, a lot of these, I think what people look, I think it's over the weekend, right? When you look at the strikes that the Israelis did, and look how the Iranians responded, right? And the question is, who did a strike to cause degradation of a military force, and who did a strike as a message? And the question now becomes,
the IRGC just said, let me give you what the IRGC said so you can add this to your analysis. Following the successful operation of the IRGC Navy in hitting 21 targets at American air and naval bases in the region and downing an MQ-9 drone in the sky of Jam County, and considering the continuation of the enemy's hostility, to complete the retaliatory operation, the forces of Islam and the brave airspace fighters of the IRGC target destroyed 4 important targets, including the hangars of F-35 fighters at the airbase and the command control center of the American Army in Al-Azkar, Jordan, using their long-range solid fuel missiles. Our forces are ready to deliver, etc. So, yeah.
I mean, that's what the I mean, yeah, right. So I guess I would wait until we get subsequent reporting if the IRGC has had an effect on U.S. military bases, or if this was more of a
reporting from who? Reporting from who? The Americans? I think both sides are going to exaggerate.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, but you can get others. Like you can debate that, but like a lot of the imagery. I mean, people can say whatever they want, but like the best expose that we got of damage that U.S. military bases suffered came from 2 news organizations, the Washington Post and CNN.
No, I agree.
You can say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, those are the ones that actually report it. What I would just say is that we just got to wait until reporting. What I just go back to is, did the Iranians actually have an impact in these strikes and kind of this messaging aspect? Obviously, from the Iranian perspective, they're going to claim a lot of the more success. And to your point, for an eye. It's interesting they said 21. They said 21 because the U.S. did
missiles?
20.
21 missiles?
21 strikes.
Targets.
What did Fox News report? 20. So what did the Iranians say? Oh, we did 21. Oh, okay.
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
Because it's exactly what Ozzy's saying.
That's the game.
So what Ozzy is saying,
according to Fox News, the Americans targeted 20 targets, and now the IRGC made a claim saying we've targeted 21 targets.
That's what Ozzy is saying. She's not. That's exactly right. There's so much more that's much more narrative than in reality. It goes back to who did strikes to actually degrade military capabilities and who did strikes from a messaging perspective. And that's how you have to analyze it. Now, granted, we have to wait to see what are these strikes happen and what the end comes and all that. There were 21. They say they launched 21. Let's see what happens. Because if they targeted Bahrain and they targeted Jordan, let's see if we can get reporting to see how much they launched to see and how much it is. Because right now the strikes in Jordan, our understanding there was 4 ballistic missiles. So there has to be more. There had to have been more launches against Jordan. There had to have been more. So we just got to wait and see what happened and what were the impacts, see what were the damages, if there's any. And if there is, does CENTCOM respond, or they just say, okay, you guys got to win. We got to win. We're going to go back to negotiations.
Yes, this attack, I can't explain the extent of the American. My explanation remains the same. The Americans are trying to do what the Israelis did. So I don't know if I've explained this already. I think I said it before you joined Ozzy, or before even Steph, is that the Americans have been, for the last few weeks, they've been very limited in their responses against the Iranians. It did show weakness. And the Israelis showed strength in their response to the Iranians. Now, did they want to escalate? No. But they did show a lot more strength than Trump did in the last 2 weeks. So now what we see is the Americans doing the same thing. They're like, look, we've been a lot more restrained for the last couple of weeks whenever Iran was establishing escalation dominance. We've got to take it up. We're going to take it up a notch. We've got to show like, hey, all right, we did lose this strategically. I know you disagree with me, Stefano. We did lose strategically. Trump does want to leave. It's not a hidden secret anymore. Iran does control the Strait of Hormuz. This is the new reality. Our bases did get hit. But while all this is happening, we are still the most powerful military in the world. And we're not going to just leave with our tail and our tucked in. We will strike hard, and we will maintain, we will show that our capabilities are still there. So we want to walk away, but we're not going to walk away allowing Iran to be able to kind of have the last laugh. But I do think that both sides do want to show that they have dominance.
Look, I don't know if you
sorry,
guys just saw.
They do want to. Sorry, I misspoke because I was looking at. We have Mark Montgomery joining us in 15 minutes. But what I wanted to say is that both sides do want to show that they do want to de-escalate and wrap up the war. I still stand by that. Many people disagree, but I still have that position. Sorry, go ahead, Azi.
I just wanted to say I was checking Trump's Truth Social again. As I said, I mean, nothing. Even with the escalations or the responses from Iran hitting Jordan, even out of right now, 17 minutes ago, he's congratulating Lindsey Graham on winning his re-election. So it just
they don't want to escalate. Azi, it's very clear, and that's just another important thing. Trita Parsi said something very important. When the Israelis were attacking Iran, the attack seems very aggressive, and I was pretty surprised seeing all these cruise missiles fly out of the Mediterranean, and then the air-launched ballistic missiles as well. The amount of missiles launched by Israel, that caught me by surprise, the extent of the attack. But then when I brought that up with Trita, who has a lot of sources in Iran, he's like, Mario, yes, they did fire a lot of missiles, but it was more for show. The reason is the targets that were struck were not important targets. And he even said the petrochemical plant that was struck, symbolically, it might be big because we can say petrochemical plant struck, but it was a smaller petrochemical plant with limited damage. So he said, Mario, based on the attack that I've seen from the Israelis, it was more limited than what, how we see it from the outside, especially the massive plumes of smoke. And that's why the Iranians responded in a de-escalatory way, because they realize Israel doesn't want to escalate in the targets that they struck. So there's a lot of these things that we don't know. It's always important to remember we don't know what targets each side is striking, and that says a lot because the Iranians know that which targets the Israelis can strike if they want to cause a lot of damage. If they strike targets like, oh, why did they strike this? Because they don't want to hurt us. Because they want to show that they have force. They want to show escalation, but they don't want us to escalate. So there's that. That kind of
Mario, the Navy
through warfare.
Their Navy wasn't significant either. That was also for show. And I'm not saying the U.S. hit it for show, but I'm saying the Iranian Navy wasn't as instrumental.
The Air Force and the Navy were exactly. Yeah, it allows Trump to say, sink their Navy and Air Force. But that was never a threat. Stefan is the one that analyzes the Iranian threat in his previous career, and all he focused on was their ballistic missiles. And I assume.
Whoa! The reason why is because I worked for an air defense unit. We don't.
All right. So, but the Navy.
No, hold on. Okay.
Let me ask you a question. Was the Iranian Navy ever taken seriously?
I mean, was it? No, but is it a threat? Yes. If they were going to close the Straits of Hormuz, they were going to use their Navy to do it. Absolutely. I don't know where, this is it's like this idea. It's like, I think the Trita Parsi, that is, if you want to say conducting strikes against maybe the petro facility, okay, got it. But they struck air defense assets.
There's sirens in Kuwait, by the way. There's sirens in Kuwait.
So if there's one thing the Iranians care more than their ballistic missile program, it's their air defense program. Right? I mean, their air defense is a big deal for Iran. Let's make this abundantly clear. That is not
there's sirens in Kuwait, just to let you know, guys. The attack has not ended.
So there is a huge it would be interesting to see Mario just caveat if it came from Iran or it came from Iraq. That's the only thing that's just because those could be Iraqi groups that launched from Iraq against Kuwait. To say that the Iranians, the reasons why they couldn't have an impact in Israel is that the Iranians have a significant problem when it's dealing with the Israelis, and it's range. It is the range and the distance they have to go to conduct the strikes. That's the problem the Iranians have. The amount of systems they have that can target Israel is significantly less than the targets they can hit in the Gulf. That's number one. So that's why the Israelis have the advantage, because from the Israelis' perspective is we can have persistent air coverage and operations over Iranian airspace All we need is refueling capabilities, and we can start doing 24-hour strikes inside of Iran. The Iranians can't do that.
Let me sorry to interrupt you, Stefano. Sorry to interrupt you because Mark only's got 15 minutes. Admiral, I was just referring to earlier because we were talking about, you were probably one of the very few guests on my show that was saying you and the former commander of of CENTCOM, you were the only two that were saying on my show that the US has the ability, two of the very few, to control the Strait of Hormuz if they choose to, considering what their tolerance for casualties are, etc. So I was talking about that discussion we had, but more importantly, the reason I wanted you on, and thank you for joining on such short notice, to get your initial reaction to the attack. So we saw the downing of the Apache helicopter. What do you think of that? What do you think of the response from the US, the extent of it? And there's an ongoing attack by Iran now.
Sure. So first, I think Trump is trying to keep the lid on this. In other words, keep it inside the Strait of Hormuz, inside the Arabian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz area. And the reason he's doing that is in his belief that he's somehow close on a deal on the Strait of Hormuz. So he is allowing, proportionate strikes against maritime targets, but an increased level of proportion. In other words, when they fired last week twice at different vessels and the weapons were shot down with no damage, he allowed very discrete proportionate strikes that hit radar sites on some of the islands, Larak Island and others, but
Kashem.
Kashem, and on some of the launch sites. This time I'm sure they're expanding it to other elements of the maritime maritime infrastructure that the IRGC maintains in the Bandar Abbas area. My gut reaction is he will not do economic strikes yet. He's trying his hardest to prevent that because he does not want this to escalate. He's trying to do the same thing with Netanyahu with Iran. That's why after they struck in Iran and Iran struck back and didn't get anything, I think he convinced them, we're done, keep it proportionate at that level. He's trying his hardest to keep this proportionate. I don't know how long you can do that. And you certainly couldn't have done it if either of these guys had been killed. But I don't quite understand how this helicopter was shot down yet. It's going to be interesting to hear exactly how that happened. But to be done in a way that the two pilots could, my wife was a helicopter pilot. I'll say, generally speaking, I didn't feel good if I heard that she had to do an emergency landing. And doing an emergency landing at night in the water is a real pain in the ass.
That was my next question, because it seems based on the statements coming out of the US, me and Ozzy were talking about them earlier, they're indicating that the possibility of it being accidental is there. They didn't say it was, but I think based on CNN, they said they briefed Trump, and Trump believed that the attack on the helicopter was significant, even if it was not intentional. And there was a similar report from another outlet that Ozzy was leading, American outlet, that hinted in that direction. They're not saying it wasn't intentional, but they're saying the possibility is still there.
They could have been a blind impact. It's hard to believe. It also could have been this helicopter's chasing a drone to hit it.
Exactly.
And, there's a lot of ways I can imagine this. I've seen a lot of helicopter v drone accidents, a number, not a lot, in Ukraine. It's not impossible. It's harder to shoot down than you think. And certainly, we've had at least one Ukrainian F-16 ingest the debris of a destruction of a drone that resulted in the loss of the F-16. So there's a lot of ways this could go down, that it was not hit by a targeted weapon. But still, the weapon was fired from Iran. And I believe that's what, sunk in Trump's head. And Trump's right. A proportionate strike back, I think, is the right thing. This is not worth going disproportionate yet. Disproportionate means you're done talking for several weeks. And I think Trump, in his mind, wants to try to get this resolution on a Strait of Hormuz deal. And he's going to continue to try to keep the lid on it.
Admiral, sorry, go ahead, Mario. No. Admiral, I have a quick question for you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
For those that don't understand, in lay terms, they see, a helicopter here. There was, a strike or an impact, whatever it ends up being, intentional or not. But then they see the level of strikes from the U.S. side. Of course, we as the U.S., we go in with all of our might. So, of course, we're going to go in 10 times over. But how do you reconcile that for those that are not familiar even with the lingo or what proportionate means in terms of even, the rules of engagement. If you can just very briefly explain that, that would be helpful to the listeners too, or viewers.
Look, if you got 5 admirals or generals here and ask for 5 description or proportionate strikes, if a description of proportionate strikes, you get 5. I wouldn't call any of them wrong necessarily because they're generals, but I would say you could get 5 answers. So here's how I'd kind of paint it. A proportionate strike says I'm going to strike back. It's not necessarily the same number of weapons. It's the same target set. In other words, you fired at me. You used a radar on this island to get sensing data. You used a launch from here. Your weapon was stowed here. We observed the weapon come out from there, fire, and scoot back. The launcher, things like that. So what you're doing is confining it to the same type of weapon system and generally try to get right at the place it came from. Sometimes you can't do that, and you hit a radar nearby or you hit a launch point nearby that you've detected. But you try to keep it. What you don't do is after a military on military event, strike a gas field or strike a petrochemical plant. If you think to what the Israelis struck a few nights ago, you don't do that in a proportionate strike back. And so the proportionate doesn't necessarily mean the same number of weapons. It means this. And I have to tell you, there's a big difference. Israeli and U.S. strikes, a large percentage of the weapons hit. I mean, about 100% hit. And I think 95% hit the intended target because very little is being shot down these days on that side. The Iranians have a tougher time of it because there's just a percentage of things, particularly fired near U.S. Navy vessels, are being shot down. I think we still have challenges with drones going into ground infrastructure because we have not fully developed a land-based infrastructure, a land-based counter drone interceptor capability, as say I see in Ukraine when I'm there.
Why is Iran targeting Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait? Why the Emirates and Saudi keep getting away scot-free for the last couple of weeks?
Well, I would say the Emirates is, I think they've backlogged a lot of strike at this point. As you know, the numbers massively. If you add these to the previous numbers, they're massively disproportionate, right? Why Saudi Arabia? First of all, well, here's one way on UAE. UAE has still has Iron Dome operating along with an effective ballistic missile system, along with with a series, American planes that may be equipped, American provided planes that, operated by the UAE that have advanced precision kill weapon system. In other words, they're smart enough to understand you're not getting through there. Kuwait and Bahrain, they're hitting with ease. And I still, Saudi Arabia might be like, they did make some headway with Saudi Arabia diplomatically 2 years ago. They may, in their mind, still be seeing them as a possible leverage point. You'd need to invite in a former ambassador to get that for sure. But at a military level, I would hit Bahrain and Kuwait if I were them because they're relatively undefended.
So Fars News reporting, a knowledgeable military source reports Iran has targeted the hangar of US F-35 fighter jets, which we heard the same report earlier, in Jordan using long-range Khaybar Shakan solid fuel ballistic missiles. There's renewed attacks on Kuwait as we speak, by the way. But it's just that report on the hangar, the F-35 hangar, and the missile, the Khaybar Shakan missile. Do you know much about that? The solid fuel ballistic missile?
It's engageable. I mean, I will have to see if it was engaged properly. We have a lot of systems there that could shoot that down in Jordan. We'll have to see. I would say our ballistic missile percentage during the 40-day conflict was pretty high on shoot downs. I think it's been not quite as high during the last 3 or 4 weeks of exchanges, mostly because of the targets that are fired at. But I would have thought Jordan was in a pretty well-defended area. We'll have to see. Certainly, if I kept F-35s at a base, that base would have the full gamut of U.S. ballistic missile defense capabilities.
Another question I want to ask you, Admiral, and something me and Stefano were debating earlier, we'll probably keep debating it after you jump off, is about your concerns with America's readiness when it comes to drone warfare. What concerns you in that regard?
Well, I think I spoke to you about this last time. I think the U.S. Army, the U.S. Army really has a hole in its swing. And look, it's more than drone warfare. It's low altitude cruise missiles. The U.S. Army was very good at this in 1990. They had about 23 battalions of Rapier and IHawk. Over 35 years of not having an enemy or that use those kind of weapons against us, We allowed that capability to decay away. Those were all retired. The replacement system was called IFPC. I don't get it all of it, but I call it the Phoenix Suns of missile defense, 2 years away from being 2 years away. I've been promised since 2015 when I was at Paycom that it was 2 years away. It's 2025. It's still 2 years away. And not having that made a big difference. That would have given you a low-cost interceptor against cruise missiles that you could have used against drones. Additionally, the Ukrainians came to us a year and 3 months ago and said, look, here's our counter-drone interceptors. This is when they had about 10. They now have 23. Randy George, the chief staff of the Army, and Dan Driscoll, the secretary of the Army, came to Ukraine and saw this stuff in person. They did not set what we call in the Navy general quarters and say, holy crap, there's a big difference between what they have and what we have. And this is about Shaheds and in this case, Jarans, Russian Shahed-type drones. And if we're going to get in a mix-up with anyone with Shaheds, which would include obviously Iran, we should have been working this. And the bottom line is there's a level of arrogance that if we don't identify it as a problem and develop the solution, we tend not to do well. And in cruise missile defense, the OIL, Iraq and Afghanistan battles did not require it. Our capabilities decayed, our skill sets decayed, and we've just gotten to be not very good at it. And as a result, we're doing very poorly on drone defense. We rely completely on the Air Force's advanced precision kill weapon systems. Let me say completely, 90% reliant on a rocket on board a F-18, F-15, or F-16. Well, in short-range shots into Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and parts of UAE, parts of Saudi Arabia, that meant you would have to be feet dry over Iran to start your intercept runs. That is not, at a low altitude, that is not a smart move in terms of man pads and other threats. So our air capabilities weren't aligned for the short-range shots. By the way, the system I just described is perfect for defending Israel. 400-mile shot with a Shahed will follow behind you for 3 hours and shoot you all down. And we did that twice, and it gave us a false sense of assurity that in the joint force that we were okay, when in fact we had completely kicked the can on this. And we're scrambling now, but I still think we're not there. And our Arab partners, following our lead, bought Patriot and THAAD, didn't have the systems necessary, the ground-based interceptors, and they're scrambling to get them from Ukraine as well. So, this is a sad sack story that doesn't redeem well on us. The good news for the U.S. military is we do eventually, when kicked in the teeth enough, we learn, and we will be very good at this pretty quickly.
And final question for you, Admiral, is another MQ-9 was shut down according to the Iranians. They keep getting shut down. Does that concern you at all? They're meant to be shut down. It's not a big deal.
Yes.
There's enough of them.
They're unmanned. They're doing great surveillance. They're doing great attacks.
Pretty expensive though, no?
Okay. Yes.
That's how a rich country and military talks.
A couple Patriots, right? 2 THAADs, 3 Patriots. That's the cost of them.
Okay.
So we can.
There's bigger problems than MQ-9 drones.
This is not the problem we have. When I see these pictures people have of all the planes shut down and they have all these MQ-9s and make it look like I worry much more about, and I don't worry about the AWACS because they weren't good to begin with and we need to get rid of them. But the KC-135s, when 2 of them are destroyed and 6 of them are damaged, now the 2 destroyed were that midair, but some of them were damaged. That bothers me. F-15s bother me. F-35 damage bothers me. MQ-9s we can live with. And then, first and foremost, we give America, to its redeeming feature, particularly our Army and Marine Corps, care a lot about, maximize the risk to force to ensure, or minimize the risk to our forces to ensure our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine get back. And I appreciate that. And the MQ-9 does not fall under that rubric.
Admiral, it's a pleasure to have you back on the show. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you. And sorry I was short fuse here. I'm just in and out. All right.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, man. So exclusive footage obtained, KK, if you can show this on the screen, exclusive footage obtained showing the explosion from an earlier US 5th Fleet Bahrain from a closer point of view. Is that the explosion inside the base? Can play it, KK, with the audio. Let's see if it plays the audio. You can hear it. Doesn't show anything on my end. Like, I thought you were playing it. Oh, bullshit. I saw it already. Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah, I thought it was something significant. It's nothing. The producer doesn't want to play it because literally doesn't show anything, and I thought so. Stefano, just on that, what do you think of what the Admiral said on the preparedness of the drone warfare capability.
So,
in the cruise
no, so I
missiles.
mean, the IFPC is a valid criticism, but there are other systems.
What is the? Can you explain it? What can you explain what it is?
The IFPC is basically like a short-range air defense asset that was supposed to be designed to conduct, as you said, low-cost interceptors. There's other systems that we have, such as the Coyote. That's another one that is in existence. Obviously, I don't disagree that the Ukrainians have mastered this. And let me make this abundantly clear. I do not disagree with the general that the Ukrainians have mastered this, and what he highlighted was exactly true, that in the long distance, you have a lot of level of success compared to the short distance. The thing is, though, in the short distance area, the way the United States mitigated this is just said, we're pulling out. Like, we're not going to deal with this. We're going to reduce risk, and we're going to pull our forces out. Now, the Ukrainians will tell you they don't have 100%. The Ukrainians, again, learned a lot of the air defense community that I can tell you when I was in, we were like, oh, wait, you can do this? That is very interesting. We were not aware that this was within the realm of possibility. And we learned from that, and we applied the lessons learned. Now, the things that need to be updated is in these cheap counter UAS systems that need to be rapidly put into place. But there's a lot of things that the way that the fundamental difference is in these short-range interceptors, how the United States mitigated that is we just basically pulled out a lot of our forces from that area. It was not going to be. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mario.
Sorry, I was going to reply. I was just update the audience. There was an attack in Kuwait. There were sirens in Kuwait. We don't know what the target is or how significant the attack is. We didn't get reports of missiles being fired from Iran, so it might have been just a small attack or drones instead of a.
Again, it goes back to what I was saying. Don't discount the Iraqis. I mean, one of the things that was the Iraqis have capabilities, and they've always been a thorn in a lot of the problem sets, right? Look, again, I would just say to people that what the general identified as true in many aspects, I would agree. What the U.S. kind of mitigated in a lot of the short range that he has identified is a lot of those bases were just evacuated, right? That's why the NAFCEN base, they hit it, but because for the most part, it's not being utilized right now. The KAOC, an IUD air base, was hit. It was abandoned. And they fought from South Carolina, Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, which is the headquarters of U.S. Air Force Central. Because again, it's like, well, yeah, there's even the Ukrainians who've mastered this, who I would agree are mastered, they don't get 100% of the drones. It's impossible. You're never going to achieve 100% in anything. You can adapt, you can overcome, you can learn, but you're not going to get 100%. And how the Ukrainians fight and mitigate that threat is in a very different scenario than the United States, because the U.S. maximizes air projection over Iran. And as such, you have to assume some sort of risk to get to that area. And so, again, were there areas that there could be improvement? Yes. Is there non-kinetic abilities that the U.S. has to intercept? Yes. The IFPC is a piece of shit. Agreed. Coyote.
Do you think the Iranian attack now is over? We've got alerts in Kuwait. No significant attack could have been from Iraq. We've got the announcement by the Iranians, what they've attacked, what they've targeted. No talks about any other targets being targeted. What do you make of this?
I mean, it could be that it's over. It could be. Could we
see another wave?
Possibly. Again, I would say when the IRGC, okay, let me for example, when the IRGC says we hit a hangar with F-35s, I mean, one, I can assure you, Mario, that the Iranians do not have persistent BDA and ISR capabilities to determine effects. Right? Like they literally, while the missiles were in the air or about to hit, the Iranians already claimed success. The Iranians don't have 24/7 ISR coverage to determine BDA. They don't. We do. The U.S. does. They don't. We can tell you what, if you read how CENTCOM framed it, is like, this is what we targeted. But notice it's not we destroyed this. It's our targets were this. If you read the Iranians, like, not only did we target it, we destroyed it. The strike just happened. There is in no universe you can already know this for a fact, right? So again, it goes back from that. It goes back to, is this more messaging and IO than actually trying to have impacts and capabilities and how they do it. I wouldn't be surprised if this over. I think the Iranians, the reason why they launched 21 is because Fox News said the U.S. did 20. So the Iranians always need to say they did more. And that's why they did it. And then that allows them to claim a win and kind of take a step back. The Iranians in no universe can already know they had a successful strike when it literally just happened, and that again goes
Well,
back to
they've
the
got,
same thing
but
that
this goes back. Yeah, you hear the same. Hold on, you hear the same thing from Trump. We've destroyed their military. We've destroyed their air capabilities, their air force. We've destroyed their navy.
Right, but that's, I mean, you could say, got it. Now, the Iranian Navy and then you have the IRGC Navy. Those are two, technically,
I'm
those are two
saying
separate things.
Trump claims.
Right, but right, when you're talking about the Navy, when you saw the strikes, I mean, we're talking about weeks and months later after the fact. What I'm saying right now in this strike, right now, currently, is Iran is already saying we destroyed this, this, and this, but they're not saying we targeted. No, they said we destroyed. We had major success because we destroyed these facilities, right? That's how they're framing it. If you read the CENTCOM statement, it's like, these are the things we targeted. But it leaves open to the interpretation from a military perspective. One thing is what you targeted, and one thing is the effects you had. And that's kind of the fundamental difference in the conversation that kind of goes back to what were the things that kind of...
I'm just trying to find the IRGC statement. Claims the attack U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in separate semi. Also claimed the US were attacked. Yeah, I don't see the statement where they said they destroyed. I think that was more Iranian media. The IRGC have released a statement regarding following the successful operation hitting 21 targets, American air and naval base in region, and downing an MQ-9 drone in the sky of Jam County, and considering the continuation of the enemy's hostility, to complete the retaliation operation, the forces of Islam and the brave airspace fighters of the IRGC targeted and destroyed 4 important targets, including the hangars of F-35 fighters. Okay, different form of communication.
It's like, look, I'm not saying they didn't. I'm not. Let me make this. They could be absolutely right. It just happened. Like, in what universe do you even know that this is true? Even me, even when if I was with the U.S. military, where we would have consistent, and we would see all the drone feeds, we wouldn't even make that a statement, right? Again, it goes back to the messaging aspect, and that's the kind. In the CENTCOM, we targeted these things, and what that was leaked to the only thing that was leaked to Fox News was the quantity, 20 targets, right?
Yeah,
and we don't even know. And again, it just goes back to the whole message.
Let me ask the big question, because South Lebanon just got struck a few minutes ago, and they haven't stopped getting attacked. So it's nothing new. Where do you guys stand? Actually, let's go to Azi first. Azi, what do you think of Lebanon and what Israel's doing there? Do you think that the Trump will be able to rein in Netanyahu?
I'm going to default to my professional hat of words, and I think it boils down to semantics and playing with the words and the semantics, Mario. I've been kind of watching and tracking how this is all going. If you look back at what the ceasefire was, the original round after, the ceasefire or pause, I'm going to use both words. Everybody used them differently for Iran.
Ozzy, Trump just shared this on his Truth Social, but it's just the CENTCOM. It's just the CENTCOM.
Okay. I literally just refreshed it right before I answered Mario, and I missed that CENTCOM. Yep, I see it too.
I didn't see him. He posted it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just go to his Truth Social. You see it there.
With a video of all the generals, like from the.
He's posted a video.
And then he also tweeted out. He also tweeted out Hillel Neuer's White House tweet with a video of some generals saying, "quote The mission is a proportional response with a question mark." That was interesting to me. Why he did that.
Yeah, KK, can you show Trump's posts on Truth Social so I can see it with the audience? Yeah. So your question, Azi, what do you think would happen in Lebanon?
So if you look back, so after this around the same time that we had the Iran-US ceasefire, there was the Lebanon-Israel ceasefire, right? And then that got extended. A lot of people thought that it got extended because they wanted to buy time and kind of pause the front with Lebanon so that they can take care of Iran. But of course, we didn't see a lot happen there. If you look at the wording and the semantics, though, I feel like it's boiling down to words. Don't go here, but it's okay to stay here. And then the next round, it's okay, you can just stay here, but you can't go here. And I feel like it's just a lot of dancing around locations and where Israel can strike or not strike, expand an operation, stay contained in an operation. And the entire time, Mario, it doesn't seem like Hezbollah has any seat at the table to be involved in it, except for the one Truth Social post comment we saw from Trump the other day where he said, last week, he said, I even talked to representatives from Hezbollah. beyond that, though, they're not involved in, from what I see and read, I haven't seen them actively involved in any of the conversations. So there's that aspect of it, and then there's the they keep changing the goalpost on where they can go inside of Lebanon or not, and I think it just comes down to words and these technical semantics of areas. And until that gets resolved definitively once and for all, and there's established expectations, if they're going to continue with the ceasefire and allow Israel to continue, then they need to establish where those areas are and keep it contained to those areas.
Yeah, the question of whether they'll abide. By the way, there's Ukrainian drones have attacked the Novrubuye, whatever, oil refinery in Russia's Samara region, causing several fires at the facilities. It's crazy how when a war drags on for a long time, people just become immune to significant news. Like you've got the event in St. Petersburg where Ukraine struck all the missiles, including the Oreshnik that struck Ukraine, and barely makes the news because it's been so long. It's just wild how the human. If that was 3 years ago, everyone would be freaking out, up in arms on every front page or every newspaper. But people are now just become so immune to it. It's just pretty crazy to see that. And now because Iran is just a fresh attack, one missile, everyone's up in arms while there's Oreshniks being fired at Ukraine. A New York Times, a U.S. official described the IRGC's claim of 21 attacks on U.S. military sites in the Middle East as simply not true. I agree. Like we've seen the even all the groups that I look at, even ones that are very sympathetic to Iran, are all questioning the claim of 21 targets being hit.
Who reported that? I'm sorry.
Iranians claimed there's 21 attacks. A U.S. official told the New York Times, according to a U.S. official.
Okay.
Well, what's your stance, Stefano? Do you think if Trump requests Netanyahu?
Did you guys share that he shared that West Wing proportional response clip? Have you guys seen that?
No, KK, if you can. No, KK, can you show that, please?
I think KK is trying to look for it.
Yeah. So if you go to, it's the I don't any West Wing. Has anybody seen West Wing before the show?
No,
I have
not.
Ozzy, you have. Please tell me you have. You got it. You have to.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying. It was interesting though because Stefano, look at the quote though, right? He shared a screenshot of.
Right. So, but he shared the video.
Yes, but look above it though, Stefano.
Right. The mission is a proportional response, which is a joke in reference to that clip.
With the question mark.
Yeah. Yep.
You can't ignore the question mark.
Well, so Mario, so you understand in that clip. I mean, I don't know if KK can get it or not. I mean, I can even. I mean, I don't know if I can.
I can. Oh, he's got. Look, he's got the video up.
Can you play it, KK? Yeah, press play with the audio. Oh, it's having buffering issues. So can you explain, guys, while he's sorting out the issue?
The video is not really relevant, Mario. The video is not really relevant.
It's a joke.
It's
from a movie.
I mean, from a series.
Yeah. So the president in that, right? The general says, "Hey, Mr. President, this is a proportional response," and what he responds with is, "Well, I want a disproportionate response." Right? Because it's like Americans were killed. And they're saying, well, we got to target this as a proportional response. And the president is furious. And he says, well, no, I don't. I want a disproportional response. Right.
So he's just trolling. It's nothing significant.
But I think what he's trying to say is he's trolling, yes, in the construct of saying, I'm willing to go. If he's using that clip as a commentary, it's the idea that I'm willing to go more than what others would have expected, which, Mario, let's be real, when you and I both started this, and even when, I mean, Ozzy, I think when you'd agree, when we started the space, once it hit 3 waves, right, what is this? I mean, let's see if it works now. Hold on. I think you have to go down one more. I think you might have to go down one more. I don't know if he can go down one more to get it because of the two social.
I think it's really hard to play, but Stefano explained what the video shows, but if you look at the caption, there's alerts in Bahrain again, guys. The attack is ongoing.
So alerts of Bahrain as we speak. So yeah, the attack by Iran is ongoing. I don't know the scale of it, how significant it is, but because we haven't gotten reports. Usually, if it's a significant attack, you'd get alerts of missiles being fired from Iran, but we didn't get those alerts.
So it's interesting. It's interesting, if I may. Axios is reporting from a U.S. official that only 4 ballistic missiles were launched. Well, sorry, no, I misread that.
Total
Sorry,
or just now? Oh, okay.
No, so Axios just reported like a couple minutes ago, and it said at least 4 ballistic missiles and several more drones were fired by Iran at U.S. bases in Bahrain.
More. So that's another wave. Yeah, they're talking about another wave.
So at least 4 ballistic missiles are saying, and several more drones. So I guess the question is, what's
okay.
Yeah.
But that was before that report. The attack is ongoing. Is that about only Bahrain, or did they mention Kuwait and Jordan?
No. So they're saying right as of like 6 minutes ago, Axios is reporting at least 4 ballistic missiles and several more drones fired by Iran at U.S. bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan.
That's a small attack, and that's in line with the reports we got, because that's all the OSINT sources. Okay, so missile and drone alerts, missile alerts have been activated again in Bahrain as we speak. So yeah, there will be other waves, because otherwise it'll be a very small attack relative to the attack against Israel. Very small. Israel had 15 missiles. Considering the scale of the American attack, I would be surprised. As you said, Stefano, you said like you'd expect about 15 missiles as well. That's what you said to me earlier.
I would expect a little bit. I mean, again, let's just wait until we get solid numbers. But if I think the fact that the Iranians, it could be also a distance perspective, right? Because obviously the Iranians, to have an impact in Israel, they have to launch ballistic missiles, right? As the admiral rightfully identified, if you launch drones, those take hours to reach Israel. You're going to find them. You're going to intercept them. I like the defense. I like the distinction with the cruise missiles, though, because that's a very excellent and valid point that he made there with the cruise missiles, right? If you want my opinion, I think in that aspect, the cruise missiles is a significant problem. And that's where the whole conversation of hypersonic comes in, because a cruise missile is very maneuverable, but it's subsonic. Now, imagine you have the maneuverability of a cruise missile at low altitude flying at hypersonic speed. That's when it's a problem. That's when it's a problem. But that's a separate conversation. But I think the Iranians are forced to target Israel with ballistic missiles because of the distance to actually show that they did something, even though it wasn't necessarily effective. Here, they're able to leverage drones to have somewhat of an impact. But again, the question then has to go back to, which is these strikes really designed to have a military impact? Because you can look at the strikes that Israel did, and regardless of what the projects say, I'm sorry, from a look, you could just look at the air defense. The Israelis released the videos. We can see the destruction of the air defense assets that the Israelis had in Israel and in Iran. That's a military impact. That is specifically from an air defense perspective that the Iranians need to try to at least ward off some of these capabilities. And it looks like the United States followed a similar set, that's what they're trying to target. And then that's when, Mario, you and I are talking, if there's a next phase, well, you've already started kind of setting the groundwork for that. And I think that's the key differentiating factor here.
Yeah, agree.
Can I say one more thing about that?
There's another, there's the actual report. Yeah, go ahead, sorry. No, that's the thing. You just say Bahrain, but we don't know how many missiles yet. Go ahead. Or even there's any missiles, could be just drones.
Real quick to Trump's Truth Social post. He was mocking the executive director for UN Watch. So I kept thinking, I keep going back to this because, it's almost like it's triggering a signal in a sense that kind of invites the idea of whether or not the US meets the legal threshold for the response that it gave. I'm glad the Admiral was here and also Stefano is here to kind of explain what, proportionality looks like. But that was a direct jab, as in, hey, watch yourself. And Trump posting it is mocking that in terms of the sarcasm there with the executive director for the UN Watch.
Overall, I would come to the conclusion that we won't see any significant attacks from Bahrain, from Iran. I'm seeing the Axios report come in. On the Israeli front, can we go back to focus a bit more on that? to analyze that. Where do you guys stand on what's happening in Israel? Whether that could be sabotaging the deal that is being negotiated between Trump and Iran, guys?
I don't think this strike is going to have a material impact. Again, it goes back to look. It looks like the strikes.
Not the strikes. I'm talking about. Oh, you're talking about the Israeli strikes back and forth.
Well, right now, I think the negotiations are going to continue, and I think the Iranian response clearly shows that the Iranians want it to continue. It's very interesting. Look, the memes and all that Trump released with the video, et cetera, fine. Right? He's trolling and all that. But there is an argument to be made that even everybody in this room, when we were covering this, when we started,
explosions are being heard in Bahrain. Just thought I'd mention. Yeah, continue.
Yeah. I think a lot of this was when the United States announced the strikes. I think we were all kind of surprised, like, wait, there's more waves, and then more, like there was 3 waves, and that kind of like, okay, it's almost like 3 hours long. We're like, okay, wait, that's more than what we thought, right? Because if you look at the historical strikes that CENTCOM has done, very limited, single digits, specific targets, in response to something specifically. This was more. This was much more than that. The fact that if the Iranians really only did, 4 ballistic missile strikes and some drone strikes, it's like, I think that shows that the Iranians want the negotiations to continue. And it goes back to what Ozzy was saying, which is an eye for an eye, but to claim a win.
Ozzy?
I think Stefano said a lot of what I was probably going to say there. I think that probably soon. Oh, okay, we already saw the explosion.
Yeah, I
think we're gonna.
well with this.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up seeing. I think we keep talking about a deal, but I think we need to be clear here. It's a memorandum of understanding, so it's that baseline framework for a deal to potentially happen within the next 30 to 60 days. And sometimes in the conversations we get lost in this and forget about it. And it's very easy to just say deal instead of MOU and framework and explain the whole thing. So I think that MOU is going to come to fruition at some point for many reasons. Now, whether that ends up with a definitive deal, peace deal, nuclear deal, whatever the case may be in 60 days or so, at least, that remains to be seen. I think eventually some kind of deal is going to happen, but we're talking about that MOU right now at this point. And that's the easiest off ramp for everybody to pause.
But you think even Netanyahu will be, because if Netanyahu wants to keep striking Hezbollah, and if that is a red line for Iran, if Iran wants the war in Lebanon to completely stop, not just Beirut, then what happens? Will Netanyahu get his way and the war will continue and the deal is sabotaged? Or Netanyahu will have to stop?
But that's what I was talking about earlier. If you go back and look at the language from Iran, they were very explicit and they said, don't go to Beirut. Do not strike Beirut. Do not strike this area. The way that they framed it was, it almost seems like everybody has, and I hate to say it like this because, a lot of, innocent people are even being impacted by this, and we all have friends and loved ones in Lebanon as well. But at the same time, even Iran looks like it's taking the position of don't go here. It was an explicit warning. If you go into this area, we're going to respond. It was never get out completely and we're going to respond. So
true, but I'm saying, but the part of the MOU, they want a complete ceasefire in Lebanon. And part of the peace deal that was discussed between Lebanon and Israel, Hezbollah, with the support of Iran, said, no, we will not abide by the ceasefire unless Israel pulls out of the territory. So that seems like a red line.
Yes, but do you remember also in April when we were talking about the ceasefire between US and Iran? Remember, Stefano, we had a space that night. Remember that? Okay. Initially, the foreign minister of Pakistan came out with it was like, what was it, 40 minutes or so before it was officially announced by Iran, by Trump, and then Iran even came out afterwards and confirmed it. That initial report said that Lebanon was part of it. Yair Lapid and several others came out, put some pressure on Netanyahu, and within 2 hours or 1 hour or so after that long Substack from Yair Lapid and Naftali Bennett and the Ben Gavirs of Israeli politics in Netanyahu's government, it all of a sudden changed, and it was like, no, Lebanon is separate from all of this. It was never part of the agreement. They walked that back. France got involved. Others got involved. And simultaneous to Iran and US ceasefire, or that pause, we saw something emerge with Lebanon and Israel, right? And then within a week, there was that, historic moment and event where they met and discussed and all that. I think Iran is playing the same thing. Lebanon has to be part of the ceasefire to kind of force them into agreeing to finalize something how do I say this? To pull heads out of ceiling fans, I guess is the best way I can explain it. To emulate what they saw in April, what they did. They put pressure on, they said, this is going to be part of it. Pakistan came through and supported it. And then they backed out. Because if you remember, Iran agreed to that US ceasefire knowing Lebanon wasn't formally part of it. They ended up agreeing to it. So
to the which
you
ceasefire?
see what
to
I'm
the
saying?
first ceasefire?
Right.
That first April 7th, that April 6th, April 7th. I'm so tired, I forgot what date it is. But that ceasefire, Iran conceded later. They moved on. As soon as they saw all these other countries getting involved in supporting a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, the US actively playing a role in it, Marco Rubio getting involved in it, Iran backed away from it and continued on. It was just for that rhetoric was.
But if I may,
they didn't continue to demand that Lebanon has to be a part of it.
They did. The statements, from what I understand, the statements every week was Lebanon is part of the ceasefire, Lebanon is red line. They didn't retaliate militarily, but they said the war has to end on all fronts. That's been the rhetoric from them.
Yes, but I think Stefan understands what I'm trying to say here.
I think I agree with Ozzy, but I think Mario, the reasoning why you're analyzing why Trump cares about Lebanon is because you're analyzing it's for him it's more important tied to his negotiations with Iran. How I'm viewing it, it's much more important the Israeli-Lebanon component that's being negotiated in Washington, D.C. Because the agreement that Lebanon and Israel reached as part of the ceasefire is Hezbollah has to pull out south of the Litani River.
No.
That is a significant achievement. Now, Hezbollah clearly does not agree to that, right? They don't.
No, Hezbollah agree. No. Through Nabih Berri, Nabih Berri said Hezbollah agrees to go out to the north of the Litani River if Israel pulls out, similar to the deal from decades ago, if Israel pulls out from Lebanese territory.
Right. And then they say, right, okay, they say that, and it's one of those where Hezbollah said that before, and they never follow through, right? And it's kind of this like
Israel said many things before, and they did not follow through.
No, right. No,
Israel did pull applies on all fronts right now.
No, got it. But Israel did pull out of southern Lebanon, right?
True, they did pull out of, except the 4 positions. Yeah, they did. They did pull out of South Lebanon. But when the ceasefire was agreed and Hezbollah was pulling out of the south, there was footage of them pulling out. The Lebanese army, the United Nations said they were pulling out. The Lebanese army was for the first time destroying significant munitions of Hezbollah. I'm not saying they completely pulled out, but they were pulling out. While they were pulling out, Israel was bombing them on a daily basis.
Correct. I mean, because
that was not part of the ceasefire. But that was not part of the ceasefire.
Right, but what I think the issue is where the Lebanese piece, where I agree with Ozzy, is what forced Iran to respond was the bombing of Beirut. In the end of the day, if I find it very hard to believe, right? Because it's the same aspect with Gaza. Because technically, if you want to say all fronts, that includes Gaza. Israel is not pulling out of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen. They're not. And again, it's the question.
But no, Iran was not that explicit about Gaza. They hasn't made an official statement about Gaza, mentioning Gaza. I don't know how long, if they ever mentioned it to ceasefire. Lebanon, every second day.
Right. So I would agree, but where I agree with Ozzy is this idea that there was where they say they want the ceasefire in all places. The issue, though, is where you see the discrepancy is, one, when they conduct a military response is when Israel conducts strikes inside of Beirut, which, by the way, after this latest round, I think Iran is going to think twice before that. But two, the issue then becomes, if you're analyzing it from the MOU perspective and there's a ceasefire in place, Israel is not going to leave Lebanon. They're not leaving Lebanon. The only way you can see Israel leaving Lebanon is through the negotiations they're having in Washington, D.C. between the Lebanese government and Israel. And in the end of the day, I do not see Iran risking a renewal of conflict because of Hezbollah. If there's agreement on everything else.
I don't think it's a bad point. I don't think it's a bad point. I disagree, but just slightly. Because Iran coming out of this war, they need to reassert the importance of the axis of resistance. As a deterrent, it worked. And this is why they struck Israel so hard after one building in Dahya was struck. Just remember, and put this into context, Israel struck one building, didn't even level it. Before that, they were asking for mass evacuations of Dahya. Just by one building, Iran wanted to remind the axis of resistance in the world that the alliance is strong, bring them all together. They attacked Israel, a pretty heavy attack compared to what the attack on Dahya was, just one building in Dahya. And then the retaliation, next retaliation included the Houthis. So that's a reminder to the axis. And there were statements coming out of the Houthis and the Iranians, and also videos and not videos, photos of Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Iran together, or Lebanon and Iran together. We stand together. It was Iran trying to control the rhetoric and make it clear that the axis of resistance is strong, and also tell the Lebanese people, we stand by you, improving their image in Lebanon, winning the hearts and minds of the Lebanese, but also of the region. A lot of people in the region are very critical of what's happening in Lebanon, and many see Iran as the only country, rightly or wrongly, because I also blame Iran for dragging Lebanon into the war. But right now, Iran being the only country that's standing up to Lebanon. So no, I wouldn't be surprised. Another attack on Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait. Yeah, they're going on. The attacks are ongoing, so it's hasn't ended. We're seeing multiple waves. We're seeing footage now of Patriot surface-to-air missiles engaging incoming ballistic missiles. Just a photo, nothing significant. But there's attacks on Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait. All three countries again.
Just real quick, guys. While you two were discussing that, I was looking it up because I remember actually Gaza mentioned. So Al Jazeera actually reported on it. It was June 1st. And Araghchi came out and suggested even, the mounting Israeli invasion of Lebanon and its strikes on the country, etc. And then said the ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. is unequivocally a ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon, and then also spoke about Gaza there. Spoke about the ongoing hostilities.
But that's what I mean. So we have to go 9 days for a statement about Gaza where he mentions about ongoing hostilities. About Lebanon, it's mentioned every second day.
Well, they brought it up in April too.
Yeah, but I'm saying you had to go back. I know they mentioned this.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Trump talked about sharing the fees with the Iranians, but I think in terms of a clear demand, it was part of the ceasefire agreement where Lebanon only was mentioned, and on a regular basis by officials.
That's true.
As official stance, Lebanon.
Right, but what I would say is Israel has been. There's been expensive sites in Tyre, got it with one in Beirut, but if you're telling me Beirut is Iran's red line. I mean, that gives a lot of freedom of maneuver for Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel to operate in a lot of areas.
No. The red line. Sorry, there's two red lines. So the red line is Beirut in terms of an attack on Israel right now, but as part of the ceasefire, Lebanon as a whole is a red line. Now, could they move on that? Maybe, depending on what offer the Americans give them. But that weakens them significantly, because if they walk away from Hezbollah again, that would weaken the axis of resistance, which the Iranians need to expand their influence.
I would say, Mario, that the idea of the prime of the axis of resistance, to your point, that deterrence, when it was at most effective, was prior to October 7th. Israel, first, the loss of Bashar al-Assad is a fatal blow for the axis of resistance, right? Besides that, Israel has been able to degrade elements of the axis of resistance, specifically Hamas and Hezbollah, significantly. And now the question that I have is, what I'm interested is in the situation of Iraq with the popular mobilization fronts and the pro-Iranian groups there. That, they're making the rhetoric. It sounds rhetorical. It sounds more propaganda, not reality. But some of the key ones have claimed that they're willing to hand over their weapons to the Iraqi government. And the key one there is Al-Haq, AAH. I mean, AAH is not a minor player within the pro-Iranian groups. They're not, right? The only one probably more powerful than Al-Haq, Kataib Hezbollah and maybe the Badr organization, right? Al-Haq is one of the top players in Iraq for the Iranian groups. And the fact that they even said that they're willing to hand over their weapons to the Iraqi government indicates that even there's at least there's a concern within that. So I agree with you that there's elements that Iran is trying to save as much as possible within the axis of resistance. But the strongest it was October 6, 2023.
True, of course. Militarily speaking, it is. Now, strategically, it's a different discussion. Yes, right. I think strategically as well as the weakest has been considering Assad is gone. But if you add the fact that Iran managed to sustain a war with the US and come out controlling the Strait of Hormuz, etc., that kind of shifts the balance. But yeah, militarily, yes. But if they maintain the alliance, they could rebuild the military capabilities, especially with drone warfare. It shows asymmetric warfare works really well. With the support of the Chinese, they could rebuild those capabilities.
Right, but let me ask you a question, Mark, because with the Straits of Hormuz, like, again, the Iranians' plan was always to close the Straits of Hormuz. This isn't like people like that's the thing that to me I kind of pull my hair and it's like I don't understand. They've always had the plan to do this. That's why they need.
But they've managed. It's not the of course the plan was there, but the Americans.
But no, hold on. But that's why.
But they closed it and they maintained it closed.
If you militarily want to close it, like actually, like okay, let's put it this way. The argument, like the U.S. blockade, is how you would militarily do it, right? You have your naval destroyers there, and you enforce the blockade militarily. That's why destroying the Navy for the Iranians is a significant loss because they had the plan. The other areas is through the speedboats and through mining. Now, the speedboats have shown a degradation because we saw Admiral Cooper in his briefing to the U.S. House of Representatives, the Senate, say that when they historically would see the Iranian speedboat operate in dozens, they're seeing them now operate in twosies and threes. That's why the Iranians are trying to mitigate and compensate that with drones that requires constant air coverage. The problem in the Straits of Hormuz, technically, is the insurance companies. That's the closure. It's the insurance companies that won't cover.
Yeah, but the insurance. But everyone likes to say. I know everyone says that, but the insurance companies.
Like the US.
Yes, but it's not. Whether you want to blame the insurance, the insurance is not covering it because of military reasons, because of military risks to the ships.
Right, but it's the psychological and military.
Yeah, but that's all they need to do. Yes, fine, but they did it. So,
but that was always part of the plan. So this isn't new.
Yeah, but the Trump said
this is where the Navy matters. This is where the Navy matters. This
they could do it with drones. They could do it with drones. I understand, but they could do it with drones.
Now we're going back to the original, all the way in the beginning, Mario. Now we're going back all the way to the beginning. Why, when you're talking to the economists, why has the price of oil not? How is it, Mario, that when Russia invaded Ukraine, the price of oil was higher then than it is now? That's because the war now we're talking about an end to the war and there's already a ceasefire. Was there a ceasefire when the price was high in Ukraine? This one ended in 40 days. You're talking about war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine that continued till now is ongoing. Correct.
With the war in Iran ended after 40 days, Trump was talking about a ceasefire. Before then it was well over 100.
He was talking about 6 weeks. No. When the campaign started, when we were doing the spaces, from the beginning, they said 4 to 6 weeks. They didn't end this. Let's make this clear. They didn't. I don't believe the ending of it was he had two choices. He either wanted to forcefully do it through ground operation, or he wanted to give the diplomatic approach a chance. After 6 weeks of military campaign, 4 to 6 weeks, it lasted about 6 weeks.
We're moving away from.
What I'm trying to say
Iran,
is,
Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz closed.
Correct.
Blame the insurance companies, blame the drones, blame the mines, blame the ships, blame the missiles, blame the artillery, whatever they would have used. We could debate that. They closed the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said, I'm going to escort ships. He didn't escort ships. Trump asked NATO to help him escort ships. NATO said, no, we will not help you escort ships. Trump said, yes, I'm going to escort ships. They didn't escort ships. Even the energy secretary, I think, posted or Scott Bessent posted that we escorted the first ship and deleted it after hours. Everyone was excited. Oil collapsed and deleted it. So Trump clearly wanted to, but didn't. For weeks. Right. Anthony's like, okay, I'm going to accept the ceasefire. Lindsey Graham and everyone, we can't do a ceasefire. We can't accept this. We can't accept that. He did a ceasefire. From ballistic missile program, no one's discussing ballistic missile program, to destroying their proxy network, the alliance network, whatever you call it, axis of resistance. No one's talking about just dismantling the axis of resistance now. All they're talking about is opening the Strait of Hormuz with the possibility of Iran charging a fee that Trump tried months ago now, to try to get a percentage of. That was the new negotiations that Iran may unfreeze the assets. It was a concession by the US, and what does the US get? A promise by the Iranians to open the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. The oil price is down now because the Iranians are letting ships through if they pay the fee. And the Americans, that's a fact. I'm not making this up. And the Americans are letting ships
Mario. All right, Mario. You said that there was an agreement. If we want to go back to your reporting, you said that an agreement was in place, and then you cited an UNCLOS saying that fees were going to get through. The U.S. Treasury Department has already announced that they would put sanctions on any vessels going there. U.S. CENTCOM has enforced a naval blockade and conducted strikes, and the southern portion of the route of the Straits of Hormuz, the reason why a lot of this, it looks like it's being deleted, is for more of the issues because they're doing it behind the scenes. That is why the Apache helicopter was shot down. Look, I don't disagree with you that the Iranians have an upper hand because they don't need much to close the Straits of Hormuz. You know where's a similar situation to this, by the way? You know why the United States didn't attack North Korea when they were building a nuclear weapon? There is one reason why the United States did not go to war with North Korea when they were building a nuclear weapon, and it's because of Seoul. South Korea, the capital of Seoul. The reason why is the North Korean artillery, if we ever go to war in Korea again, Seoul is getting leveled by the artillery that North Korea has. Gone.
Same as
goodbye.
The Gulf. Yeah.
Millions of people would die. Now, if you're analyzing this from the Straits of Hormuz and you're talking about it from a perspective of a military component, an actual military component, the reason why Iran is not having the effect of stopping all the vessels from coming down through the south, that is mitigating the measures of this, that the reason why the Apache helicopter was brought down, why did Iran launch? Let's say it was an accident. Let's say it was 100% an accident, that it wasn't a 358 was shot down, it was a one-way attack UAV. Then why did Iran launch one-way attack UAVs in the Straits of Hormuz? Because they were trying to target a vessel. They were trying to target a vessel who was bypassing the Straits of Hormuz, and it hit the Apache helicopter that now caused all this. Why did they launch it? Because clearly there's vessels bypassing the closure.
Yes, I mentioned it. I know the ship's going through.
But it's not that they were allowing it. It's not Iran saying, "Oh,
we don't know." It was zero when Iran wanted to be zero. It was zero ships. Even the Americans confirmed the oil price was skyrocketing. It was zero ships. Now both sides are allowing it. Do you know that the Americans and the Iranians are allowing it? Iranians are letting ships through.
The Americans in CENTCOM will release statements saying, "Hey, these vessels have gone through." Now you can make the argument they're saying
Iranian vessels. Stefano, Iranian vessels have gone through. You know that as fact as well every day.
There's Iranian vessels that have gone through, but more importantly tied to where the U.S. CENTCOM says it from a humanitarian perspective, not for sanction evasion. That has been closed down because of the blockade.
Iranian vessels with oil have gone through. And that's according to multiple tracking, the vessel.
Right, which has been, now granted, those reports, now if they're taking their land routes in a lot of those in the territorial waters is one thing, but the vast majority of the Iranian vessels are still closed, and most of the reporting that we're getting is that the amount of oil exports that the Iranians have been able to get through is penny on the dollars, penny on the drops.
It depends. There's conflicting reports.
No, conflicting reports. Significantly less. And you're no way you can tell me that the current blockade, is Iran exporting more oil now or before the war?
Of course, before the war. Both sides
were. Well, there is an impact, a material impact.
I never said there's no impact. Hold on, Stefano. When did I say there's no impact?
No, but I'm just trying to say.
No impact. I just said, but hold on, you're correcting me when I said both sides are getting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians are getting ships through the Strait of Hormuz, whether they're hugging the coastline with Pakistan, whether the Americans have let them through, whether the Iranians missed them by they're turning off the Americans missed them because they turned off the transponders. I don't know. I get different guests speculating the reason. And American ships have gone through. Is it because the Iranians allowed them? Is it because they turned off their transponders and the Americans guarded them? They destroyed the Iranian radars. I don't know. I think it's a mix of all of them. Both sides are getting ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The original argument I'm making, and we're saying that Iran has a strategic benefit, is because they succeeded in closing the Strait of Hormuz. Now, you're saying everyone knew they're going to close it. Many people knew. That's one of the things that's very surprising to me. Many people assumed, apparently for decades, the U.S. was preparing. No.
Most people, with all due respect, when we were starting this before, a lot of people heavily pushed back on two things. The idea that Iran would close the Straits of Hormuz, but more importantly, the second aspect that people heavily pushed back on was this idea that Iran was going to conduct attacks across the Gulf.
Yeah, so
And
that's the
I
difference.
know this
Even
because
Iran threatened this,
because-
by the way. Iran threatened to strike the Gulf, but it doesn't. It'd be surprising to me. Anyone's surprised when you go to a country, kill their leader, and bomb the hell out of them during negotiations. They wouldn't do all it.
No,
would
I
take
agree.
to
They were
tolerate.
going to. I don't
Yeah.
disagree. Now,
Yeah, but I'm saying
what I'm trying to get at with this idea of the streets, you're not understanding my argument, Omari. We're kind of what I'm trying to argue with you is because this is where it's this idea that are the certain vessels get through. I think it's way less of what you're saying, and I think the vast majority of the vessels
I don't know how
that
many.
are through is the U.S. I've seen those reporting the vessel trackers, which by the way, U.S. official has and reporting has heavily denied any of this, and the ones that they do say go through, the U.S. CENTCOM releases those statements and numbers and says what the reasons why they go through. Right? There's enough. I heavily dispute the fact that the Iranian oils in large quantity are getting through and enough to do it. But that's besides the point. That's not the reason for this whole argument that we're getting right now. The argument is from a military component. And the end of the day, Mario, that's what matters. It's the military component to be able to do that. What the United States is doing in the blockade is exactly when the Iranians planned this, there was two areas they wanted to do that, either through the naval forces, as the United States is doing now, or through mining it, right? The southern route is being able to, right? The southern route is the way where we're seeing this and all that. The problem that the Iranians have is that they need the threat, which, by the way, has existed in many times in the past when the Houthis were conducting strikes in Bab el-Strait and during the Somali piracy issues as well. There was large areas off the coast of Somalia where maritime vessels were not allowed to go through because the insurance companies denied it. They denied you the ability to go through Somali territorial waters or clog the coast. You had to go all the way up to the coast of Oman, and then you were able to move on. That added fuel and cost, right? Besides the point. So those things have existed in the past. That's what Iran does, because there was a moment that nobody here talks about when the foreign minister of Iran, Arachi, released.
Sorry, real quick, Stefano. I'm seeing also some news. I don't know, Mario, if you saw this as well, but it looks like Iran's declared that their operation is over.
It's over. Yeah, just so it now. Yeah. And the Bahrain and Kuwait have given it all clear.
Yeah, I have a quick last thought on Lebanon. And Stefano, I don't know where you were, if you want to finish your thought or.
I would just say that from a military component, I think this is where it goes back to is when we're talking about the closure of the Straits of Hormuz, what the United States is doing in the blockade is what Iran attempts to do, and they are very limited in how they can do it. They're relying on speedboats, and more importantly, they're relying on drones that a lot of them require. It's harder for them to conduct targeting quickly. That's a problem they raise. Arachi released a statement way back when oil prices really plummeted, when he said, we reached an agreement, Straits of Hormuz open, U.S. ending their blockades, we're going to continue with the MOU. And Arachi was blasted by the IRGC and the news organization because they realized that by saying that, Iran lost all their leverage in the negotiations, the only leverage, because Trump now has a decision.
By saying what?
By Arachi, the foreign minister of Iran, this was shortly after the ceasefire, a week or 2 weeks after, made an announcement saying that the Straits of Hormuz are completely open, and the Americans were going to end the blockade. President Trump reposted that. The Iranian IRGC blasted Arachi because they realized that if there's no psychological threat, their deterrence is gone, and they have nothing.
What do you mean psychological threat? No, hold on. It's nothing psychological. Maybe they just disagreed with him that they wanted to open it. There's a disagreement. Others argue that Trump.
But the psychological component for the markets. It's a psychological.
True. But that has nothing to do with Iran's ability to close the Strait of Hormuz. It's completely unrelated. Also, the Arachi walking it back was also after Trump said he will not reopen, he will not lift the blockade. So he said, despite Iran lifting it, so a lot of people saw that as Iran giving the olive branch. Hey, we'll lift ours, you lift yours. Trump was like, no, I'm going to keep mine. The Iranians are like, screw you, we'll keep ours. And they kept it. And that was across the board. Even
right.
Trump
you're right in that aspect. But yeah.
But on the,
you're right. That would I correct. You're right. Yeah.
No, all good. So on the, go ahead, Az, you want to mention like a final point on Lebanon?
Just a final point. Somebody wise once told me that there's a saying, how do you boil a frog? There's an approach, they call it, how do you boil a frog? And essentially it's slowly. And if you look at what I was saying earlier was about the semantics, right? Iran says, don't go into Beirut, don't go here. Israel is constantly trying to expand it, Remember when, the Katz came out and said with Netanyahu, they had a meeting and they said they're going to expand the operations. Right now, it just seems like there is this test in who's going to win the war of escalation, or some kind of escalation deterrence, right? It's not the Strait anymore. It's not anywhere else. It's Lebanon. Because if Israel is going to use this to prevent any kind of MOU or deal with Iran, they're going to constantly try to escalate it by expanding their operations in Lebanon, right? Iran is constantly going to say, no, 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 we're going to escalate it if you go into Lebanon. And you have Trump over here saying, you know what? Screw both of you. I'm just going to escalate it at some point. I'm going to start with you here and I might end up with you over there. So right now what we're seeing is a shift. It's literally Lebanon is the hotbed for who's going to come out the strongest in this escalation deterrence ladder. So
Yeah. No, I had a lot of
and
my
I think
guests
that's
tell me
where
now
the
Lebanon
words
is the number
matter.
two.
And I think that's where those lines matter in terms of, why
Yeah.
Iran did what they did on Sunday.
So that's just the front-facing one. There's also a lot of my guests are telling me, and I'm seeing it as well, that Lebanon is becoming a bigger issue. But there is also a lot of discussions that the sticking point, and I think I agree with this, that the sticking points are the unfreezing of assets. Now, there's a solution to that as well. I think Qatar came up with a solution of offering a loan collateralized by the frozen assets.
I 100%
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
That's the sticking point, 100%.
Yeah. But I think Qataris found a solution to it. It is the harder one, lifting of the sanctions as well. I'm not certain of this, but I still believe Lebanon is not that difficult for Trump to solve. I think Trump has enough leverage over Netanyahu, but I've been questioning that belief. So I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm 50-50. I still think 60% likelihood that Trump can reign in Netanyahu. But there's the 40% there that he cannot, and that ends up being the major sticking point. That would be a shame. Poor Lebanese people and poor Palestinians. Did you guys know, as a wrap up this fact? Did you know the freaking Israelis blockaded Gaza when Iran attacked them? Complete blockade of all aid into Gaza. No one's talking about it, and I've verified it. They've even given a reason for security measures to make sure the safety of their personnel. And as of yesterday, it was still blockaded. So a U.S. official tells New York Times that Iran launched multiple missiles and drones at American bases across the Middle East early Wednesday, today, just now. Nearly all intercepted per initial U.S. assessment. No American casualties, no damage to U.S. base confirmed from the Iranian attacks per the same official. We did see one impact in Bahrain, but that happens every time they say they intercepted everything, we see impacts. You agree on that, Stefan?
So here's the semantics, just so you're aware. Here's the semantic. Some of these bases are dual. They're both. There's a U.S. side, and then there's like the host nation. Now, the U.S. lies. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, of course, they can lie. But a lot of times, what would happen is one of the projectiles hits the host nation side, not the U.S. side. So the U.S. could be like, "Oh, well, we weren't hit." It's a semantic.
They said they were hit. They said nearly all intercepted per initial U.S. assessment.
Okay, so then nearly maybe the Bahrain, but the Bahrain was evacuated, exactly. So they don't care, to be honest, for the most part. But it was mostly evacuated. But it's that one Bahrain. That's the easy one. If Iran wants a win, they're going to target Bahrain, and they would target Kuwait. Those are the two easy ones where they can get a win.
Cool. All right, well, guys. Well, great coverage. Really appreciate you both jumping on. In the comments, let us know what you think. If you want us more of these shows in this format. But Stefano, Ozzy, appreciate the analysis.
This is fun.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ozzy. Thanks, Stefano. All right, guys. Let me know what you think of this conversation. If you want more formats like this, more one-on-one interviews, we're testing them out. What type of analysis you enjoy, more debate format. So I'm going to go now, prepare myself to go to sleep. I might do another interview. Unlikely, depending on my energy level. I'll have one more kind of recap with a guest. So, stay tuned. Otherwise, if there's anything significant, you'll see me live. That's a guarantee. But if there's nothing significant, I may not do anything. So we'll see. Anyway, Max, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.